Subclade K, Death Count Rising is the title of this video that nobody is going to watch, just in case there was any uncertainty that you are watching the video that you clicked on. Hopefully by me announcing the title of the video at the outset of this video will provide you with confirmation that you are indeed watching the video that you intended to watch. But for those of you who are willing to watch RD and want to know the very latest developments on the ongoing story that is Subclade K, stay tuned to the very end. You will only regret it if you don't. Who am I kidding? You're not going to regret it. Cue the clips.
My whole family getting the flu was not on my bucket list for 2026.
Influencer Paul J. Kim recently opening up about the death of his 5-year-old son.
He got influenza, a really insane case of the flu, and it caused him to go septic.
This morning, the parents of 12-year-old Connor Dickens praying he pulls through.
My son is fighting for his life right now.
All amid a record-breaking flu season that has now turned more deadly. Mortality rates, according to the CDC, more than doubling in the last week, with at least 17 children dying so far this season.
He has a supersized case of the SuperFlu.
It's been a rough winter season.
Matt Lyons says he's been sick for almost 2 months, and there's no end in sight.
I've had a couple windows where I feel okay, and then another wave of sickness comes on.
The entire nation is in the grip of the worst flu season in 25 years.
So welcome back, folks. For those of you who have the attention to watch a video longer than 30 seconds, and I am very aware that 80% of the people that initially clicked on this video have already stopped watching. But those of you who are still watching and intend to stick around to the very end, we've got some interesting stuff lined up for you this evening, including an article that confesses to knowing the origin of Subclade K. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a wet market in Wuhan, and it wasn't contaminated bat soup. If any of you have any ideas as to where you think that Subclade K originated from, let me know in the live chat. If you are watching as part of the premiere, if you are watching subsequently, you can leave a comment below, but no one ever leaves a comment below. I don't know why I even bother trying to encourage people to leave comments below, because they never ever do. But then again, nobody really watches my content to start with, so I guess let's not push the boat out too far with expectations, hoping that we may actually get some comments. But as I said, guys, this is an interesting show, or at least I think it is an interesting show. We've got, as always, some videos, recent newsreels and news articles to get through before this video reaches its climax and the dancing girl plays us out this evening. So without any further ado, folks, let's head over to the articles, and I will see you on the flip side as we commence the outro pleasantries. So our first article of the day comes from thedailymail.co.uk, and it was published around 18 hours ago at the time of recording on the 12th of January 2026, and it was updated on the 12th of January 2026 at 20:06 hours. So there you go, lots of 2s and 6s there, but never mind. Let's start by reading the headline. New SuperFlu is targeting 2 groups of Americans as hospitalizations and deaths from the virus continue to rise, by Emily Joshu-Sterine, who is a US senior health reporter. And there is a catchy graphic for you of a young child who died in the center of the spike of cases rising and doubling week from week. And on the right hand side, some people wearing masks. And look at that hipster there with his 2 short tight trousers and some slip-on shoes holding a coffee cup. But hospitalizations, the article starts out by saying, from this season's SuperFlu are surging, especially in older Americans and children. New data shows. The latest CDC data, which runs through January the 3rd, shows the weekly rate of hospitalizations largely driven by H3N2 Subclade K, or the SuperFlu as it is now being referred to as, is up by 53% from the week before. Overall hospitalizations for the season are also up 37% compared to the week before. This adds up to nearly 40,000 Americans being admitted to the hospital for the flu in 1 week, up from 33,000 the week prior. The increase has largely affected Americans over the age of 50s compared to the start of this year's flu season in October. Hospitalizations for people over 50 has surged 157%. And compared to late December, just ahead of the holidays, outpatient visits in this group went up 51%. Older adults in retirement homes and other long-term care facilities are also increasingly being hospitalized, with rates increasing 53% in the last week. Young children who are particularly vulnerable to the flu due to having undeveloped immune systems still made up the largest share of flu-related outpatient visits at nearly 20%, through doctor visits among this age group are on the decline. Flu-related deaths overall have increased 70% in the last week, from 0.9% to 1.9%. There's something trending there about an Iranian the Ayatollah wants to hang. But here is the picture of the young individual, Isaiah Castillo the Fourth, a 2-year-old from New Jersey who died on January the 6th from complications from the flu. His family announced on Facebook and GoFundMe. His picture above. Now, our fat fish friend Tuna Dude mentioned something in a previous Subclade K video during the live premiere about hearing something about another family that recently lost a young one, and the first thing they did was set up a GoFundMe. One of the sort of popular trends of contemporary times, it would seem, is losing a loved one. The first thing to do is start a GoFundMe and post it on social media and have strangers pay for the funeral expenses. But if or not you would be inclined to do the same, that lays with you. But it does seem to be something that modern folks tend to do, display their grief for all to see. But the article carries on by saying that the new data also shows pediatric flu-related deaths are up, with 8 reported during the week of January the 3rd, adding up to 17 total for the season. Now, 17 child deaths is obviously something we don't really want to hear about daily in the news, but 17 out of the entire population of the United States of America, I'm going to say, is not exactly the largest number of deaths, but as I said, tragic nonetheless. They include a 2-year-old named Isaiah Castillo, who we just saw a picture of, the fourth, and he is from New Jersey, who adds that the same, like Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth II, but Isaiah Castillo the fourth from New Jersey, is he some sort of his family special perhaps? I don't know. But who died on January the 6th from complications from the flu. His family wrote on a GoFundMe page. The New Jersey Department of Health did not publicly identify Castillo, but announced the death on January the 9th. Castillo's family identified him on Facebook and a GoFundMe. Read more. The SuperFlu has origins in an unexpected place. Study finds as researchers warn the virus will get worse. And look, there you go. There's that picture of a lady and a slightly non-masculine looking male wearing masks. But acting New Jersey Health Commissioner Jeff Brown said in a statement, "This flu season is already shaping up to be a very serious one, with more cases than previous years and tragically one child's death this week. We extended our deepest condolences to the child's family." I'm sure they'd rather have some donations on their GoFundMe page rather than condolences. But by getting vaccinated, we can each do our part in reducing the spread of flu and other respiratory viruses in New Jersey and helping prevent serious complications. Now, New Jersey is one of the states that is on the severe case statistically, and is one of the highest number of reported cases in the United States. I think New York is leading the charge in that one, but New Jersey and I think California are battling out for second and third places for the most reported cases of this SuperFlu Subclade K. But the New Jersey officials' warnings comes after the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced a major overhaul to the nation's childhood vaccine schedule, and by all accounts, the flu shot has been removed from children's vaccine schedules. Wonder why that is. We can only speculate. But under the new guidance, the United States will no longer recommend that all children get annual flu vaccines, which are the best known measure of preventing the illness. The shot is typically between 30 to 75% effective, but as of mid-December, 42% of American adults have received this season's flu shot, which is in line with last year's figures. And there's a graph there with a scary line darting upwards, and it says the above chart shows the increase in influenza-related hospitalizations in people in long-term care settings. So there you go. And I think it was Curious Georgia that mentioned something about hearing something from a colleague or a friend of hers that worked in an old folks home. It said all of the old folks in that old folks home all started coughing and spluttering at the same time. If you're watching Curious Georgia, add some confirmation to that if you would be so kind in the chat. But there is another map of the current influenza activity levels data through to the January 3rd, 2026, and they do sort of run a week behind with the data. So the yellow is low, orange is moderate, high is red, and sort of a burgundy blood red is very high. And there you can see most of the sort of severe cases are on the eastern coast and sort of into the Midwest, whereas sort of on the east coast there, look, you know, we've got some yellow, west coast rather, we've got some yellows and some high, obviously California, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle are showing some high numbers there, but sort of Arizona and Utah, some of those states there look in yellow still. Influenza hospitalization, hospital admissions and rates by week, and again through to the January the 3rd, 2026. Hospital rates per 100,000 and influenza is in red, and influenza hospitalizations are in blue. So there you go, make of that what you will, and of course statistics and graphs can be made to say exactly what they want to be said. But according to the latest data, weekly hospitalizations have increased from 31.3% per 100,000 people to 54.1 per 100,000 people, a 53% jump. Cumulative hospitalizations, which measures the rate for the seasons, are also up from 28.1 to 40.6, a 37% increase. However, test positivity is starting to decline after several weeks of surges during the week of January the 3rd. 1 in 4 tests come back positive compared to 1 in 3 the week before. So maybe a little bit of silver lining there. But the number of states reporting very high influenza activity has also decreased from 34 the week over December 27th to 27 the week of January the 3rd. So again, a little bit of silver lining there. Not all doom and gloom. Some figures are on the decline, whereas others are increasing by the double. Areas with the CDC's highest activity level, level 13, include New York State, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Colorado. I wonder what those states have done to upset somebody. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas what those states could have done to upset people to be targeted with this super flu. But this year's dominant flu strain is brand new to people's immune systems, making them highly vulnerable and at an increased risk of severe hospitalizing illnesses. And again, there is another picture of a child. Pictured above is Sarah Lopez, who is also 2, and she was hospitalized and had to be placed on a feeding tube and ventilator after she caught the flu. So again, children and old folks are being targeted the most, it would seem, with this latest strain of influenza, Subclade K. But how on earth would a strain of influenza decide who to target and who not to target, unless of course there were more nefarious things at play than just a rampant virus on the loose. But influenza positive tests reported to the CDC by the US Clinical Laboratories 2025-26 season. Again, the data runs through to January the 3rd, 2026, and there are some colors and some dots and some numbers for you there. And let's move on. While symptoms are the same as other flu strains, expert warns that the SuperFlu variant is leading to more severe illnesses, especially in children, with signs including week-long fevers and a cough that leads to trouble breathing. In one case, 2-year-old Sarah Lopez, whose picture we just saw from North Georgia, has been hospitalized for weeks after she was infected with the flu. Her mother, Kenya, told WSB-TV2, when I would say, "Come here," she wouldn't do it either. She would just throw her upper torso. Interesting thing to say there. But overnight, everything got worse. She couldn't sit up on her own. She couldn't talk. She couldn't move pretty much anything, just her head a little bit. Lopez was hospitalized with the flu, but then developed a transverse metallitis, a rare condition where a patient suffers from inflammation in part of the spinal cord. Nasty stuff. Symptoms include back pain, difficulty moving, and temporary paralysis. How on earth would you contract that in a hospital? But then norovirus and Candida aurora are viruses that can last on work surfaces or human beings and thrive within medical care facilities. But at the hospitals, doctors put her on a ventilator to help her breathe and a feeding tube to give her nutrients. Speaking last week, her mother said that Lopez has now recuperated. Well, that's good news. Some strength and movement in her legs, but she still struggles to stand up. She has been taken off of the ventilator, and the hospital is now considering transferring her to a rehabilitation unit. And Candida auroris can thrive in ventilators. But Dr. Neil Shipley, a medical director of Northwell Health Go Health Urgent Care, that's quite a mouthful for you, previously told the Daily Mail it is important to recognize the symptoms that ring alarm bells so you know when to seek expert help. If your symptoms worsen quickly, or you have trouble breathing, weakness, dehydration, or symptoms that don't improve after a few days, you should find the nearest urgent care, he said. And I think we may have reached the end of that article, and we have indeed. So share or comment on this article. New superflu targeting 2 groups of Americans as hospitalizations and deaths from the virus continue to rise, is the article we just read. And again, guys, if you are watching live and a part of the premiere, pipe up in the live chat. Let me know what you have to say about this. Now, there was a click clickbaity article that I did want to come back to, which is where we are heading next. This one, read more. The superflu has origins in unexpected places. A study finds as researchers war, flu season is going to get worse. And there again, I guess, is a picture of Sarah Lopez. They're going to be using her for some publicity, I guess. There's a gallery to view. Should we click on there? Noah Smothers is pictured here in the center. He died last month, so there's another child death that they are reporting of. And what else have we got? This isn't very easy to read. But a new superflu is devastating the United States, with cases reaching record heights in major cities and children becoming so sick they require machines to help them breathe. The new virus strain, Subclade K, is a variant of the influenza A-H3N2 subtype that has never circulated in people before. Perhaps it's circulated in other beasts, perhaps like monkeys or pigs or lab rats, who knows. But the latest CDC data for the week ending December 27th shows that 32 states are now reporting very high levels of influenza, up from 22 the week before. And in a previous article we just read, the numbers are up once again from the numbers we're reading in this article, but we want to find out where the origin of this superflu may be coming from. The data showed 1 in 3 flu tests come back positive, up to 21% from 1 in 4 the prior week. This is a 76% surge from this time last year. And New York reported just over 72,000 influenza cases during the week of December the 20th, its highest number ever seen. The United States typically looks to the southern hemisphere when estimating how severe a flu season will be, and we've heard all of this before multiple times in previous Subclade K related videos nobody watched on this channel. So they look to the southern hemisphere before estimating how severe a flu season will be or what strain will emerge. Places like Australia and New Zealand experienced their winter viral season before the United States and Europe, and can often be used as a precursor to the severity and strain of what is to come. The Doherty Institute for Infection and Immunity in Australia said the country's flu season differed from what is typical, and observed flu activity had been elevated for longer and extended beyond the typical winter season, and it also shifted between different dominant strains. The Institute said towards the end of the season, a fast-spreading H3N2 variant emerged, and in August was leading cause of respiratory-related deaths in Australia. A study published last month in the journal Eurosurveillance found the H1N1 strain of influenza A was initially dominant in Australia, but in August and September, influenza A H3N2 began to rise and was dominant by October and November. There is Sarah Lopez again there, and we did look at those photographs. 669 viewing now. There's some scary figures there, perhaps. Was that an article? I don't know. But there were 457,906 flu cases in Australia between January and November of 2025, the most reported since flu became a reportable disease in 2001. Meanwhile, New Zealand experienced a more moderate flu season, but it is still prolonged, fueled by the H3N2K viruses, which were introduced from Australia, the study found. So was Australia the target zero, perhaps, for this distribution of Subclade K? But overall, Subclade K viruses accounted for roughly half of the Australian viruses and more than 2/3 of the viruses in New Zealand. In the United States, 97% of flu samples since September have been influenza A, and of those, 86% were H3N2, and of those, 91% belonged to Subclade K. In investigating where Subclade K came from, researchers discovered that the first K influenza virus sequenced in June 2025 was actually from the United States. Shock horror, not Australia. More specifically, New York, which is a state that is topping the list of the increased amount of flu cases being reported. And as we have heard in the previous article, it has had the most flu cases that it has ever experienced. It was then detected in Wisconsin and Michigan in July 2025. So they're able to track it from its origin and, trace where it went before it ended up over in Australia in August, which is when they were saying that they first found it. So the origins of Subclade K lay within the United States. And where did it? New York. I was going to say if that would have been Georgia, we could have maybe linked the CDC to its distribution, but it was then detected in Wisconsin and Michigan in July, and the study noted this coincided with the first detections of Clade K viruses in Australia. Despite the Australian season occurring before America's, it appears now that the dominant flu strain actually originated in the United States, then travelled across the globe and fueled a severe flu season in the southern hemisphere before coming back to wreak havoc. Make of that what you will, folks. Jesus, you can't make this shit up, but they can. So somehow, how is that possible? How? I guess, maybe someone from the United States had Subclade K, gone on an aircraft, went to Australia, and then sort of popped over to New Zealand, or, on the plane he infected other people. But, tell me how that is possible. To start off in 3 states and then miraculously transport itself literally to the other side of the world to wreak havoc, and then sort of come back and wreak even more havoc. It's almost as though let's not go there. But the study continued based on this, and the genomic analysis results. The authors hypothesized that H3N2K viruses in Australia and New Zealand may have been imported or originated from the United States. Well, they just said that they first traced it in the United States, so it had to have originated from there if there was no trace of it prior to that. So it had to have been imported. But Subclade K viruses have now been detected in at least 34 countries. And there is some data that is now outdated. That was from the week of December the 27th. And you can see lots of reds there and only 2 yellows. So we did hear previously that some states have reduced their status from severe to moderate cases of Subclade K influenza. But the researchers said, given the speed and size of the outbreaks of K viruses in Australia and New Zealand, and the near global spread of these viruses already, it's likely that they will further expand during the Northern Hemisphere winter season and persist for the remainder of 2025 and into 2026. Now, what's to say Subclade K doesn't mutate again during this flu season? As we heard that it sort of developed towards the end of the southern hemisphere's flu season. So what's to say towards the end of the northern hemisphere's flu season, it doesn't mutate again and sort of transmit itself across the world to Australia and restart the process. But the study also noted that because of Subclade K's novelty, the flu vaccine will likely be less effective against it. Yeah, we've heard that plenty of times. Additionally, Subclade K could result in increased cases and hospitalizations compared to recent years. With the new strain, a doctor said infections are commonly starting with an unusually high temperature before shifting into a cough that is very phlegmy and extreme fatigue. Dr. Loafman, a family doctor at Cook County, CDC Health in Illinois warned there had been more fever with the flu this year than people are accustomed to, which can last for 5 to 7 days. He also added that it is worrisome if you feel ill, you feel sick, and you worry you're not getting better. And there is Noah Smothers, another child who is being named as passing away with the influenza. Noah Smothers is pictured here in the center. He died last month for influenza-related complications at just 14 years old. Poor soul. But Dr. Juanita Mora, a national spokesperson for the American Lung Association, told NBC Chicago that the fevers may not always respond to usual over-the-counter treatments such as Tylenol and ibuprofen. She said in a statement that this new strain has symptoms of really high fevers. It has a really bad cough that won't go away, very phlegmy, and also vomiting and diarrhea, and lots of joint aches as well as muscle aches. In serious cases, doctors warn that the symptoms can also leave patients struggling to breathe and need a ventilator, places where Candida aurora can thrive. But in one case, 2-year-old Sarah Lopez from North Georgia has been hospitalized for weeks after she was infected with the flu. Her mother, Kenya, told WSB-TV2, when I would say, come here, she wouldn't do it. Either she would just throw up her torso. We heard that in the last article. Overnight, everything got worse. She couldn't sit up on her own. She couldn't talk. She couldn't move. Pretty much anything. Just her head a little bit. Repeat the narrative is the best way for lies to be accepted as a truth, according to propaganda. But Lopez was hospitalized with the flu, but then developed transverse mellitus. We've read that. But at the hospitals, we know that they put her on a feeding tube. Speaking on Wednesday, her mother said that Lopez is now recuperated some of her strength. She's been taken off the ventilator and the hospitals are, so that is a repeat of what we just heard. But her parents, who are caring for 6 other children, have been unable to work during this time. And surprise, surprise, the family is asking for help to raise $11,000 to cover the medical expenses. It was not clear whether Lopez has received the flu vaccine. She tested positive for influenza A, the same type that includes the Subclade variant. Of the 9 child deaths so far this viral season, again, we've heard that that's raised to 17 now. 4 have been reported in Massachusetts and 1 in Illinois. It's not clear where the others took place. Overall, officials estimate there have been at least 11 million illnesses. That's up to 15 million now, and 120 hospitalizations. I believe that's up to 140,000 now, and 5,000 deaths from the flu, which is now up to 7,500. For comparison, at the same time last year, the CDC estimated that there had been 5.3 million illnesses, 63,000 hospitalizations, and only 2,700 deaths. There have also been 11 deaths of children during last year. So that was interesting. As it said, the origins were unexpected, and the origins are the United States of America before somehow it was able to traverse the globe and cause havoc in Australia and New Zealand before retraversing the globe and coming back to the United States of America and hospitalizing over 15 million people. Not hospitalizing, infecting over 15 million people, and hospitalizing over 100,000 so far. So that's us done with the Daily Mail. Let's go and find some other interesting articles to read, but before we do, let's break it up with a few videos.
Now to those record-breaking flu numbers for children. Nationwide, the death toll increasing 48% from the previous week. At least 15 million cases so far this season, with more than 40 states reporting high or very high flu cases. Here's ABC's Andrew Dimbert.
Tonight, a sharp spike in flu cases across the U.S., with emergency rooms filling fast, hospitalizations rising, especially among children and the elderly.
What we're concerned about is this is a very early rise in severe flu, which means that we're not even well into flu season. Of course, the concern here is that our hospitals are going to be underwater, not only to treat those with influenza, but to treat all other cases.
The rate of children visiting doctors' offices for the flu hitting a 10-year high, according to the CDC, with more than 18% of those visits being children under 4 years old. Nationwide, there have been at least 15 million reported illnesses, up from 11 million just a week ago, and 180,000 hospitalizations and 7,400 deaths.
While these numbers are incredibly striking, data often lags by 1 to 2 weeks, so we may not even see the full picture of influenza across this country as it's happening right now.
Doctors monitoring closely a new strain of flu, Subclade K, a variant that's been circulating since the summer globally in countries like Canada, Japan, and the UK. Health experts say current annual flu vaccines are not perfectly matched with the new variant, but still provides protection against serious illness. A CDC study found 90% of children who died from the flu last year were not vaccinated. And tonight, pharmacies reporting a run on tests. Demand for over-the-counter cold and flu medications and at-home testing kits jumped 155% over the last 3 weeks, according to data from Walgreens.
Andrew Dimber joining me now. And Andrew, there's also a nurses' strike next week, potentially adding additional strain to overstretched hospitals.
Yeah, Whit, thousands of nurses here in New York City could walk off the job Monday if a new contract with hospitals isn't agreed upon by then. It would be one of the largest strikes, nursing strikes, in New York City history, and would come at a time when the virus is still circulating at high levels, according to state officials. Whit.
Yeah, something to watch closely in the days ahead. Andrew, thanks.
This morning, the parents of 12-year-old Connor Dickens praying he pulls through.
My son is fighting for his life right now.
All amid a record-breaking flu season that has now turned more deadly. Mortality rates, according to the CDC, more than doubling in the last week, with at least 17 children dying so far this season. Connor, who has Down syndrome and is immunocompromised, has been in a North Carolina hospital for 2 weeks after contracting the flu. His parents calling 911 after finding their usually joyful son limp and lifeless.
What is the hardest part for you?
Seeing our son laying in the bed in the hospital with a ventilator.
It's extremely scary.
Hospitalizations from the flu also on the rise, up 20%. Those numbers coming the same week the federal government announced it's no longer recommending every child get a flu shot.
Would you recommend that your patients get the vaccine?
Absolutely.
Outside Denver at the Children's Hospital, Colorado, Dr. Suchitra Rao says more than 80% of their patients didn't get this year's vaccine, and that this year's strain is part of why they're so inundated.
This one's undergone a little bit more of drift or genetic mutations compared to other seasons. It can spread really quickly and it can cause sort of more numbers and potentially more severity.
In addition to the typical fever, chills, and aches, symptoms of this year's strain can also include stomach issues like nausea and vomiting. A flu season growing in severity and showing no signs of slowing down.
And guys, as for the flu shot, every Friday during flu season, the CDC puts out an updated report with new numbers and information. And despite that change in recommendation this week, yesterday's report was clear. It says, quote, flu vaccination has been shown to reduce the risk of flu and its potentially serious complications. Peter and Laura.
All right, Liz Kreutz, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. This weekend, a child under 5 years old died from the flu. It's the first pediatric death of the season. So far, this flu season has caused over 15 million illnesses and over 7,000 deaths. Health officials are calling it a severe season that could only get worse. Here with us now, board-certified physician Dr. Michelle Reed. Dr. Reed, always good to see you. Good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Hannah. How are you doing?
I'm great, better now. So I'm looking at these numbers. This is pretty unfathomable. At least 44 states, most of the country, are seeing high or very high flu activity. What is behind the rising number of flu cases? Is this a typical flu, Doc?
This is not the typical flu. If you remember the other month when I was on, I was talking about how overseas we were seeing this increase of what we were calling the SuperFlu, and we were anticipating what was going to happen in the United States. And this is exactly what we were talking about, where we have the flu that is here, and every year the flu mutates. But this flu is mutating at an increased speed so that even if you had the flu vaccine, you are getting some protection, but you are not getting that protection you need because not enough people are actually getting the flu vaccinations. in the United States.
I had a question about.
It's horrific.
I didn't mean to interrupt. My apologies. I do have a question about those flu vaccines. We are in the height of the winter season. Is it too late to get the flu shot?
It is not too late to get the flu shot. If you're able to get the flu shot, I am encouraging you to please get the flu shot. That is really your best defense of protecting yourself from the flu. And as a physician, as a board-certified family physician and a scientist, I am encouraging you to please get the flu vaccine, especially for our children, and especially for our elderly population. This is the only way that we can really help to decrease the number of deaths that we're seeing. Never have we had so many hospitalizations and so many deaths. And at the same time, we have to remember we are only seeing the ones who are going to the doctor or the hospital to get tested. There are so many more that we are not even taking into account for.
You make such a good point. Hospitals currently are overrun with people with the flu. We've seen overcrowding, overwhelming of emergency rooms. You're a family physician. What are you seeing for yourself, Doc?
I am seeing the same thing in my private practice and even in the schools that I am taking care of, where students are just dropping because they're weak, they're having fever, they're having problems eating, they're not able to, they're vomiting, diarrhea. People are weak, and some are pushing through, they're going to school, they're going to work, and this is exactly how it's spreading and getting worse.
You mentioned getting the flu shot. Are there any other simple actions we can take to protect ourselves from the flu and, of course, other contagious viruses out there this winter?
Well, the main thing is if you're of an age to get any vaccine at all, and that's from measles, because right now in South Carolina, we're seeing over 300 people that are getting measles because people are not getting vaccines. So if there is a vaccine that you're able to get to pneumonia, to shingles, please get your vaccines. If you are sick, stay home. Do not show up to work. Do not show up to school. Those are the two best things that you can do to protect not just yourself, but also your family members and your coworkers.
Dr. Michelle Reed, always appreciate the advice. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, Hannah.
You as well, Doc.
Flu season is here, and it's spreading quickly across our area.
Pharmacies have seen the impact firsthand as people look for help. Fox 5's Tyler Fingert spoke with a local pharmacist today, and Tyler is live in Little Five Points with more details. Tyler?
Yeah, Courtney, good evening to you. Little Five Points Pharmacy has been busy because of this flu season. The owner here tells me lots of folks have been coming in looking for relief, and some of that relief is coming from these over-the-counter medications or a prescription like Tamiflu. It comes as experts say this flu season is shaping up to be one of the harshest in recent history. Little Five Points Pharmacy is stocked and ready as a wave of sickness continues to sweep through Georgia.
We have the over-the-counter typical cough and cold things.
Ira Katz is the owner of the independent pharmacy and knows this time of year well. For more than 4 decades, he's served this community's medical needs. He says for weeks, customers have come in looking for Tamiflu prescriptions, over-the-counter relief, and homeopathic remedies.
This season seems to be a little worse than we've had in the last couple of seasons.
The CDC says Georgia remains in the very high flu activity category. New state data shows more than 400 people have been hospitalized and 6 have died since last week's update.
I was open Christmas Day, and I would say we filled 20, 25 prescriptions for the generic Tamiflu. We have the oral suspension for children. This is the adult dose, and then there's 2 lower doses.
The CDC says even as some indicators it tracks decreased or remain stable from week to week, it's too soon to say if the flu has peaked here.
It seems to have dropped off a little bit as far as getting the Tamiflu, but then again, you know, we're hearing that this season is significantly worse than in past seasons.
The CDC blames a new variant that some have dubbed the SuperFlu for the trouble this season. As the virus continues to spread, Katz says the best thing people can do is get a flu shot if they haven't and stay hydrated if they do come down with it.
It's never too late to get the vaccine. Okay, here we are. It's the 12th of January. If you haven't gotten your vaccine, please go ahead and get your vaccine.
If you're sick and don't know what to take, the best thing to do is talk to your pharmacist. Pharmacies like this one aren't the only ones who are busy. Hospital systems in our area tell me that they are seeing lots of people come in with the flu, but they are not overwhelmed. We are live in Atlanta's Little Five Points neighborhood. Tyler Fingert, Fox 5 News.
Great suggestions. Tyler, thanks.
He has a supersized case of the SuperFlu.
It's been a rough winter season.
Matt Lyons says he's been sick for almost 2 months, and there's no end in sight.
I've had a couple windows where I feel okay, and then another wave of sickness comes on.
The entire nation is in the grip of the worst flu season in 25 years.
My husband, my daughter, but colleagues, friends. I don't remember a time where everybody you ask, somebody has the flu right now.
I know a lot of people who have been sick, a lot.
Yeah. 11 million cases, 120,000 hospitalizations, 5,000 deaths.
I don't wish this on nobody. I've never been this sick, ever.
The worst part about it was every time we would think we were getting better, someone would get worse.
And doctors are reporting that some patients are experiencing symptoms that are a little weird. Dr. Frederick Davis is an emergency room physician at Long Island Jewish Medical Center.
The particular ones that we've seen a lot is nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. So things you don't see with flu as much. We're also seeing patients that come in with a lot of different body aches, chills, joint pains that are, we typically see in flu, but a lot of them feel and are sicker because they can't eat and drink as much.
Doctors say the flu vaccine can help, but many Americans are saying no to the vaccine. This year, just 42% of adults and kids have been vaccinated, part of a national trend of vaccine skepticism and hesitancy.
We've seen years and years of studies, decades of studies that have shown it actually does prevent the really bad sickness.
So now find ourselves at MSN.com for the first of several articles that have come out within the last few hours. The WISN 12 Milwaukee says, what is making this particular flu season so harsh? Here's what doctors want you to know. And there's a nice, scary-looking AI-generated graphic of some variant SuperFlu Subclade K particles. Would have actually made a nice background for a thumbnail, perhaps. But the article starts out by saying, as predicted. Who predicted it? Who knows? But the US is dealing with an intense flu season, as we all know by now. Flu cases have skyrocketed in the past few weeks, with the country facing its highest level of respiratory illnesses in 25 years, and that is according to data shared by the CDC. Video above, flu surge blamed for deaths of 4 children in Massachusetts. However, there wasn't a video above, but there is a video below. I don't know what's going on there. But based on the latest data, nearly 33. What are the chances of that being the percentage of clinical lab tests that have come back positive for flu? Hospitalization rates and outpatient doctors' visits due to the virus have also jumped. We tapped doctors to see what they want the public to know about the flu right now. What don't they want us to know about the flu? So let's watch this video. I know we've had a lot of videos, but I do like it when a video is included in the article.
The parents of 12-year-old Connor Dickens praying he pulls through.
And my son is fighting for his life right now.
All amid a record-breaking flu season that has now turned more deadly. Mortality rates, according to the CDC, more than doubling in the last week, with at least 17 children dying so far this season. Connor, who has Down syndrome and is immunocompromised, has been in a North Carolina hospital for 2 weeks after contracting the flu. His parents calling 911 after finding their usually joyful son limp and lifeless.
What is the hardest part for you?
Seeing our son laying in the bed in the hospital with a ventilator.
It's extremely scary.
Hospitalizations from the flu also on the rise, up 20%. Those numbers coming the same week the federal government announced it's no longer recommending every child get a flu shot.
Would you recommend that your patients get the vaccine?
Absolutely.
Outside Denver at the Children's Hospital, Colorado, Dr. Suchitra Rao says more than 80% of their patients didn't get this year's vaccine, and that this year's strain is part of why they're so inundated.
This one's undergone a little bit more of drift or genetic mutations compared to other seasons. It can spread really quickly and it can cause sort of more numbers and potentially more severity.
In addition to the typical fever, chills, and aches, symptoms of this year's strain can also include stomach issues like nausea and vomiting, a flu season growing in severity and showing no signs of slowing down. And guys, as for the flu shot, every Friday during flu season, the CDC puts out an updated report with new numbers and information. And despite that change in recommendation this week, yesterday's report was clear. It says, quote, flu vaccination has been shown to reduce the risk of flu and its potentially serious complications. Peter and Laura.
All right, Liz Kreutz, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, there you go. There was a video, and poor Connor can't catch a break. He has Down syndrome, and now he is contending with life with the influenza Subclade K strain, and pictures of him on a ventilator. But unfortunately, the CDC's latest report points out that things are likely to get worse before they get better. I'm sure they will. Public health officials predicted that we would be in for a tough flu season after the United Kingdom and other countries had different experiences with the flu earlier this year. All of those cases are being driven by a strain of the flu known as Subclade K. Subclade K is a form of influenza, a H3N2. We all know this off by heart, or at least we should do if you have been following along as we've been covering this story since it developed. But this variant mutated 7 times over the summer. My goodness, what are the odds that it would have the ability to mutate 7 times during the summer alone? So that's what I said earlier, guys. What's the chances this isn't going to mutate more times before this flu season is over? It created 7 times over the summer to create a more infectious version of the flu. And almost, are they telling us something there that maybe, in a laboratory somehow they mutated it 7 times in order to create a more infectious version of a pre-existing flu strain? That is speculation, of course, and just fuel for the avenues of alternative exploration. Make of it what you will, folks. But a professor and a chief of infectious diseases at the University at Buffalo in New York, where we have discovered in this video, is where the first case of Subclade K was first reported or tracked or traced to. Subclade K is largely evading a prior immunity, he said. Again, was this mutation calculated and created in a lab, or was it just a natural progression of 7 mutations to render any sort of medications and vaccines available as somewhat useless? But you might have built up from the flu shot or having previous strains of the flu, the article says, but it is less effective against Subclade K than it might have been against other flu strains. Rates of people getting the flu shot are also down, which means there's an even larger group of people who are vulnerable to getting sick and spreading it around. Russo says, here's what doctors want you to know to stay safe right now. Stay safe, SS, folks. This form of the flu is notorious for being harsh. There are different types of the flu, but flu A and flu B are the ones that fuel infections in people, Russo says. While both types circulate each year, flu A is the one that usually causes big epidemics. Are we heading towards an epidemic? It certainly seems that way, with hospitals being overrun and overwhelmed with these flu cases being reported, although I've yet to see any videos of overcrowded waiting rooms at doctors or emergency rooms at hospitals. We have seen only sort of videos from not crisis actors. Where was that coming from? We've seen videos from perfectly normal, believable people who are not actors at all, not reading from a script, telling their real life accounts of what it was like to suffer with this latest flu strain. And we've seen those real people, not crisis actors, in a few of these videos contained within this latest installment of unwatchable content. But unfortunately, Russo says that the flu tends to be particularly intense too. Still, he points out that influenza always needs to be taken quite seriously. You won't necessarily have different symptoms with Subclade K, but Russo says he's noticed more people having an intense experience with the flu this season. And just in case you need a refresher on flu symptoms, the CDC flags these as the most common: fever or feeling feverish, cough, sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, muscle or body aches, headaches, fatigues, vomiting, and diarrhea, in brackets, although this is less common. The vaccine, is it still worth your time? As we mentioned above, Subclade K has a few mutations that make it more infectious and better able to skirt immunity that you might have built up. That means the flu vaccine may be less effective at preventing infection than in the past. So, unlike sort of COVID-19, where they told you, the best thing to do is go and get yourself protected by getting vaccinated against that particular virus. They're saying this time round that even if you do get the vaccine, you may not be immune from contracting Subclade K and its serious symptoms. But according to data shared by the British government, the flu vaccine is 30 to 40% effective at preventing emergency room visits, so less than sort of 50% effective, and up to 70% at keeping kids out of the ER, although we're hearing that there have been 17 pediatric deaths in the United States up to date. But that doesn't sound great, says the article, and it's not ideal. But doctors say it's still worth getting your flu vaccine if you haven't already, even though there's a likelihood that it is not going to do anything for you this time round, because unfortunately the influenza mutated 7 times after the vaccine was produced for this season's flu outbreaks. But the influenza vaccine, and even if it does not provide high levels of protection against infection, it is still effective at preventing what matters most, severe disease, says Dr. Amish A. Abdullah, all the A's there, an infectious disease expert at Johns Hopkins Center of Security. Now, I was sort of saying, this is looking as though it is going to be an epidemic, as we do have hospitals that are overrun and overwhelmed, apparently, with these reported cases of Subclade K, the SuperFlu. And, it only takes 2 or 3 sort of states in a similar situation. We have multiple states that are severe state of influenza cases being reported in contemporary times at the time of recording. New York leading the charge in those states, I believe. But once an epidemic is, once enough places are overrun and can't contend with the amount of, illnesses that are being reported, that is when it gets declared as an epidemic. And we're not very far away in the United States from that being an actual fact. And all it takes then for it to be declared a pandemic is for multiple countries to also be reporting epidemics for the same virus. And we're hearing that this is a problem all around the world. The United Kingdom Canada and the United States seem to be the leading nations, the leading nations that are suffering from Subclade K. But we also have heard in recent videos that Indonesia is now being inundated with cases. We've also heard about Hong Kong bracing itself for a terrible flu season. We've got some stuff from the Philippines and Canada contained some videos contained yet to be seen in this video. So it is starting to gain momentum around the world, and as I said, we've heard it's an epidemic in Japan already. It's not looking as though an epidemic being declared in some states, at least in the United States, is very likely to happen in a not so distant future, especially if the trend continues of these cases sort of doubling week to week. Back to the article. Flu is a serious illness. It can take even normal healthy people and put them into the ER, says Dr. William Schaffner. We've heard all about him from the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. And he also says it's late to get vaccinated, but not too late. There are treatment options, but timing matters. There are 2 antiviral treatments approved for the flu, oseltamivir, Tamiflu, and baloxavir marboxy, exovoluza. Why do they give them such weird names? While you can technically take these at any point in your illness, they work best when you start them soon after your symptoms develop. Flu treatments, antivirals, may shorten the duration of illnesses and prevent serious complications from the flu, says Azef Faraz Covelli, who is an associate professor at the George Washington University School of Nursing. And in brackets, in a perfect world, you would take them within 40 hours of your symptoms starting, she says. Testing is crucial. If you develop symptoms of the flu, which tend to come on quickly, Russo recommends taking a home test for the flu and for COVID-19. Brackets, while home flu tests are less well known than home COVID tests, there are plenty out there. But if you only have a home COVID test around, you can take that to rule out that particular virus. But once you have your results, call your healthcare provider about the next steps. However, they have seen worse, folks. There's a lot of talk swirling around out there about how bad this flu season is, and the doctors agree that cases are high. But Adalia points out he's seen worse. This is not the worst season in terms of hospitalizations, he says. Ultimately, just do your best when it comes to protecting against the flu, like masking and washing hands. And call your doctor if you develop symptoms. And that is the end of that article. As I said, that was from just under an hour ago. So let's go and look at another recent article. Yet another one from MSN, and this one was from, again, in the last hour, 23 minutes ago at time of recording, why it seems like everyone has the flu this year. The USA is facing its worst flu season in 25 years, according to the CDC, which estimates as of the 3rd of January, there have been at least 15 million illnesses, 180,000 hospitalizations, and 7,400 deaths. Part of the problem may be a new virus strain called Subclade K, which has antigenic differences from strains used in this year's vaccine, says Jonathan Gard, who is a professor of immunology and infectious diseases at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and the director of the CDC, the Center for Communicable Disease Dynamics. My goodness, what a list of credentials that individual has. Jonathan Gard, that is some penis stroking right there. But in the following interview, edited for clarity and length, Grad explains why some flu seasons are nastier than others and what we can do to stay safe. There is a video there we're not going to watch, but we can see some familiar and similar sights of people coughing and sneezing. But why are some flu seasons worse than the other? The variation in incidence is a function of coupling things. The first is how much of the population is susceptible to circulating the strain of influenza virus. Immune protection comes from both past infection and vaccine, but both can wane with time and offer less protection as the virus evolves antigenetically. The second is people's behavior, how much they are interacting in ways that allows the virus to spread. And if you look back at the year of COVID-19 lockdowns, when there was little interaction and little opportunity for the virus to spread, there wasn't much influenza at all. Of course there wasn't, because all you did, medical organization, is rebrand the flu deaths and accounted them and attributed them to COVID-19, an imaginary virus. It doesn't really exist. But that's just my opinion. Do not take that as any form of medical advice. Always make of it what you will. Just because I believe it doesn't mean you should. But what should we know about the strain we're seeing this year? The two main classes are influenza A and B. There used to be two strains of influenza B that circulated each year. One from a lineage called Victoria and another from a lineage called Yamagata. Yamagata seems to have gone extinct during the pandemic. Interesting dialogue in this article. Within influenza A, H3N2 and H1N1 are two subtypes that have been circulating for 50 years. Over the past 100 years or so, a few different subtypes of influenza have circulated in people. The 1918 flu pandemic was the H1N1 subtype. It circulated seasonally until 1957, when there was an H2N2 pandemic, with the H2N2 replacing H1N1 as the seasonal influenza strain. But in 1968, an H3N2 pandemic then resulted in that subtype becoming the seasonal flu, in turn replacing H2N2, which we have not seen since. In 1977, however, H1N1 reappeared, but rather than taking it over, it has been co-circulating with H3N2 ever since. Usually, one influenza subtype dominates in a season, with influenza B circulating as well. This year, H3N2 is dominating. Flu B tends to be milder, though it can still cause severe disease. And while H3N2 is thought to be more severe, we don't really know why. I went through the history of flu because there is some indication that the first flu you are exposed to may influence your flu responses all your life. So one hypothesis for why H3N2 appears more severe is that people born before 1968, when H3N2 started circulating, may on average have less protection against that strain of subtype. Interesting. So old folks are more susceptible, as well as children who have yet to develop immunity. But when we hear that this year's flu vaccine didn't match up well with the composition of the flu that's circulating this year, what does that actually mean? The H3N2 strain used in the vaccine, a Subclade J.2 virus, appears antigenically distant from circulating H3N2, which is the form Subclade K, raising concern that the antibodies elicited by the vaccine might not offer as much protection against what is circulating. But a very recent paper shows that the vaccine is not as much of a miss as it has been described described, it seems people do develop responses to Subclade K in response to vaccination. Moreover, the early estimate for flu vaccine effectiveness this season is about where we'd see it for H3N2 strains regularly. But how do researchers decide what strains of the flu to use in this year's vaccination? A decision about which strains to include in the vaccine takes place many months before the flu season for the Northern Hemisphere. It's usually in February. The reason is it's so early is that it takes a long time to grow the year's stockpile of vaccines in chicken eggs, which is how most of our seasonal influenza vaccines are manufactured, in chicken eggs. Okay. Subclade K emerged in the spring of 2025 after the strains for the season's vaccines were already set. What are the odds? But this raises a question of whether technologies that can make influenza vaccines faster could help us avoid this kind of situation by allowing vaccine strain selection later in the year. mRNA vaccines for influenza might have been one potential solution, but federal support for mRNA vaccine research has been cut, so we likely won't know any time soon. Is it too late? We're not going to read that because we know it wasn't. But this is the part that's interesting. There was a small uptick in COVID in early fall this year, but it hasn't surged as much this winter. What do you make of that trend? It is likely due to the level of population protection against circulating strains of SARS-CoV-2, reflecting past infections and vaccinations. Much like for the flu, I would expect that as a population immunity wanes and new variants of SARS-CoV-2 emerge, we'll be at risk for another wave of COVID-19. So listen to what they're telling you, folks. I know there's a lot of repetition in all of these articles, but this is very interesting, that if they are saying that strains can mutate and, develop immunity against pre-existing remedies or preventative measures that the population can take to protect themselves from these diseases. What are the odds that our good old friend COVID-19 doesn't mutate and become problematic once again? But as I said, guys, this is all looking as though within a matter of weeks, I'm pretty sure that we're going to hear that at least one city or state in the US is going to declare an epidemic, and as we've mentioned, we need multiple countries to also be experiencing epidemics for it then to be categorized as a pandemic. With the numbers the way they are saying they are, I think possibly before we reach February we will hear of our first United States city or state declaring this an epidemic. But reflecting past infections and vaccines, much like the flu, I would expect as a popularity, we already read that, but he says that there might be a new strain of SARS-CoV-2 emerging, and we might be in for another wave of COVID-19. But this was provided by Harvard University, an Ivy League educational institute. So let's go and read another recent article from within the last few hours. Next up, Cornwall Live. This is an article from the United Kingdom all about a new flu symptoms to watch for as a mutant strain sweeps the UK. And it starts out there. You may feel sicker for longer and usual treatments might not work. And there is a stock photo of an individual pretending he's ill, reading a thermometer and having a cold, wet compress on his forehead. Doctors say a new variant of flu sparking affections across the UK has unique symptoms people should watch out for. The number of people in hospitals with flu increased at the start of this year, with 2,924 a day in the United Kingdom hospitalized by the virus up to January the 4th. 4 hospital trusts have declared critical incidents due to significant and sustained pressures, almost an SS there, folks, in their services. 3 trusts in Surrey and 1 in Kent have declared critical incidents. Surrey Heartlands Trust said high winter pressure had been exacerbated by increases of flu and norovirus cases. We did a video all about norovirus. Some of you may have watched, but the likelihood is the majority didn't. But the NHS National Medical Director, Professor Meghana Pandit, very traditional British name there, is clear that the worst is far from over for the National Health Service this winter, with hospitals again experiencing a rise in patients admitted with flu and other respiratory virus cases last week. So again, guys, this isn't just affecting the United States. It is also affecting the United Kingdom, Canada, the Philippines, Indonesia, Hong Kong. It is becoming a global problem. But he added it remains important that people come forward for care as usual, and there are still plenty of opportunities to get vaccinated and get protected against the flu. Health Secretary Wes Streeting said flu can be serious, particularly for older people, young children, and those with underlying conditions. And vaccination remains the best protection. I urge everyone who is eligible to get their flu jab as soon as possible. Doctors say they have seen different symptoms with the new strain of flu. The new virus strain, Subclade K, is a variant of the AH3N2 subtype of flu. We've heard multiple times. Dr. Mark Loafman told NBC Chicago those with flu are experiencing more fever with the flu this year than people are accustomed to, and the fever can last up to 7 days, so 5 to 7 days, and that's worrisome. Doctors say in some cases the fever isn't brought down by usual treatments like paracetamol or ibuprofen. Lung expert Dr. Juanita Mora said that this strain has symptoms of really high fever, has a really bad cough that won't go away, very phlegmy, and also vomiting and diarrhea, and lots of joint aches as well as muscle aches. Doctors have reported more cases of patients with stomach problems, sickness, and vomiting, also known as gastrointestinal or GI problems. Dr. Loafman said we are seeing anecdotally more signs of some GI illnesses for the adults who have the Subclade K strain of the flu. According to the National Health Services, flu symptoms often come on very quickly and are generally more severe than a common cold. While most people will feel better within a week, it can be a very unpleasant experience. Key symptoms: the main symptoms usually hit you suddenly include high temperature, aches, feeling tired, dry cough, sore throat, headache, difficulty sleeping, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. How to treat the flu: most people can manage flu symptoms themselves without seeing a doctor. The NHS recommends the following self-care steps: rest and sleep, stay warm, hydrate, pain relief, soothe a sore throat, gargle with salt water, adults only, or drink hot lemon and honey. When to seek help: the NHS advises calling 111 or booking an urgent GP appointment if you are worried about your baby or child symptoms, you are over the age of 65, if you are pregnant, or if you've had long-term medical condition, diabetes, heart or lung disease, or a weakened immune system, or if your symptoms do not improve after 7 days. Call 99 or go to A&E immediately if you develop sudden chest pain, have severe difficulty breathing, or start coughing up blood. So we are going to come back with a few more recent articles, but before we do, let's watch a few more videos to break up the monotony of me reading.
It is being called a superflu, spreading across the U.S. and Europe. And in the U.S. right now, flu surges are said to be at their highest level in almost 10 years. But what exactly is meant by a superflu? Dr. Donald Vinn is an infectious disease specialist at the MUHC. Hi, Don.
Hi, Mitchum.
So, Don, is there really such a thing as a superflu? I mean, why is this term going around?
Yeah, so when we hear about this term superflu, this really refers to an unusually intense flu season with high impact, right? So it's been fast spread, lots of cases in a short time, a lot of people getting sick at once, rising hospitalizations. All of this leads to absenteeism from work and school, but also significant pressure on our healthcare network, and that's what's referred to as superflu, although there's nothing super about it.
So the spread of the flu has been bad so far this year, as you say, but is it the spread that is bad, or the actual virus that is bad, or both? I mean, what is behind it?
You know, it's really both. But the spread is the bigger driver this year. So data from the Quebec Public Health Lab showed that early in the season, H1N1 flu was more prominent in Quebec. But then it was replaced by H3N2 flu, including this newer variant called Subclade K, similar to what's been seen in Europe, UK, Japan, and the US. Subclade K picked up mutations that help it partially evade pre-existing immunity, allowing it to spread more efficiently. That said, although H3N2 tends to cause more severe disease than H1N1, there's no evidence that this subclade K has become more dangerous. What's really amplifying the impact is the environment for transmission. As we all know, a cold winter with more indoor gatherings, as well as low vaccination rates, this leaves more people susceptible at the same time. This combination is what's driving the surge we're seeing.
So what's the status of the flu right now in Canada? Has it peaked yet, or can we expect it to get worse?
So based on Canadian surveillance data, we have not peaked yet. Influenza activity has been rising steadily across Canada since mid-November, with test positivity rates between 25 to 40%. So 25 to 40% of people tested are positive for flu. And of course, those cases have been drastically increasing throughout December. This tells us transmission is highly active in many regions. Now, the issue is when H3N2 predominates, as we're seeing now, we typically see higher hospitalization rates, not just in older adults, but also in children and other high-risk groups. Because hospitalizations usually lag infections by a few weeks, and we're just coming out of the holiday period, it's very possible we will see further increases in severe cases in early January. So Quebec may have hit its peak, but nationally, it's too early to say that the worst is behind us.
And we're being told, Don, that even though the vaccine isn't a good match with this year's flu, we're told to get it anyway as it'll lessen the intensity of the illness. Well, how does that work?
Yeah, so that advice is correct, but it often causes confusion, so let me clarify. Even when the flu vaccine isn't a perfect match, it can still significantly reduce how sick you get. The vaccine generates a broad immune response. Rather than just one strain-specific antibody, it generates an arsenal of antibodies. This means that even a drifted virus like this subclade K can still be partially recognized and neutralized, and that helps slow viral replication. Vaccination also strengthens cell-mediated immunity, which is less affected by mismatch and plays a major role in preventing severe disease and complications. So even in a year like now with a less than ideal match, the flu shot acts less like a shield that blocks every infection and more like a seatbelt, where it doesn't prevent the crash, but it can significantly reduce how severe the outcome is.
So there's a problem with the drop in vaccination rates. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Health this week, it's recommending fewer vaccines for most American children. So what does that mean for us here? Are we going to feel those effects as well?
Well, let's be very clear, right? Vaccination saves lives. That's true for the flu shot. But in Canada, only 30 to 40% of adults receive a flu shot annually. In younger adults, and in some regions, it's around 15 to 20%. Childhood flu vaccination rates are also around 30%. But this is well below the public health target of 80% for older adults and 60 to 70% for children, despite national recommendations that everyone 6 months of age or older should get a flu shot. So these low rates drive the intense flu seasons like the ones we're seeing. The news from the US, where flu and some other vaccines are no longer universally recommended for all children, raises big concerns because vaccine uptake could fall further there now and in the future. This doesn't doesn't change Canada's policy for now, but it can have spillover effects because viruses cross borders, and so does anti-science, right? So these policy changes can cause more transmission in the US, which can affect timing and intensity of flu activity here, but also affect vaccine confidence in Canada, worsening the vaccination rates in the future. So clearly, we've collectively drifted astray, but it's really time to bring science back to the forefront.
Okay. Thank you very much for this, Don.
Thank you, Mitsumi.
Well, there are growing concerns about a serious spike in flu cases as millions of Americans head back to school and work this week.
Yeah, I'm guessing odds are pretty good. You or someone you know have had the flu already. Hospitals nationwide are reporting a significant uptick in total cases. NBC's Emily Ikeda has more.
With the holidays in the rearview mirror and millions heading back to school and work this morning, health experts now warning of what is circulating amid their return.
My whole family getting the flu was not on my bucket list for 2026.
Driven by a mutated H3N2 variant, which some have dubbed the SuperFlu, infections are flaring nationwide. 29 states are seeing high or very high flu-like activity even before all of those holiday gatherings, according to the CDC.
We're seeing high fever, sore throat, cough, body aches.
Northwell's Dr. Jennifer Goebel says with this flu, patients are sicker for longer.
We're just seeing more cases, which is creating more volume, which is creating busier EDs.
New York State just reported its highest number of flu hospitalizations in a week on record. And across the country, the CDC estimates more than 80,000 people have been hospitalized amid this brutal flu season. Influencer Paul J. Kim recently opening up about the death of his 5-year-old son.
He got influenza, a really insane case of the flu, and it caused him to go septic.
Last week, officials in Kentucky and Ohio reported their first pediatric flu deaths of the season, while some hospitals in Maryland and North Carolina are ramping up precautions, adding new protocols in the new year, including masking and limiting visitors. The surge of sickness sending hundreds to their local pharmacies like this one.
We're going through tons of Tamiflu, the pills, the liquids, the antibiotics with that.
Experts say, in addition to the flu vaccine, the best way to protect yourself is to clean your hands and surfaces frequently. Try to avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, and use air purifiers or bring in fresh outside air until the season of winter viruses wanes.
We're continuing to follow the latest numbers from health officials as flu cases across Ohio continue to surge. Hospitalizations have jumped from 745 to over 1,400 in the last week alone. In Cuyahoga County, the most recent data shows ER visits are at 479. That's up from 440 the year prior. Health experts say they are seeing more complications from the flu in children.
So we're seeing kids with bacterial pneumonia, kids needing chest tubes. But right now, being in the trenches, it definitely feels bad. Like it just feels like there's a lot.
While many have dubbed it the super flu. So to find out what makes this year's season so different and what can we do about it, let's go to senior health correspondent Monica Robbins over in Studio B, because you have a person that has the answers.
Yeah, I do, actually. Yeah, this is becoming one of the worst flu seasons we've seen in a very long time, and a new variant is pushing this spread. And to learn more about what we're dealing with and what we need to do about it is Dr. Joseph Cabaza, a critical care pulmonologist at Cleveland Clinic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody's on the edge of their seat. They want to know, first of all, let's talk about this super flu thing that they're calling it now. Is this flu different from other flus we've seen in the past?
I think what really makes this flu different, that's getting all the attention and label, is that it's kind of mismatched and not as protected with the vaccine that we have going on. And it just seems to be more contagious than other flus we've had in the past. So that combination of more contagious and not as much protection, at least from infection with the current vaccine, it's getting a lot of attention, and deservedly so. Probably about over 90% of our flu A isolates, or even more, are this H3N2 subtype or Subclade K, while there's a small percentage of the other influenza A as well as influenza B right now.
So, you know, we know vaccination rates right now are hovering at 40%, which is typically kind of low, and if not less, and a lot of people are hesitant to get vaccinated. Does it make a difference if they do so now?
So getting vaccinated now still can help you in this flu season. I don't think we're anywhere near our peak, but it's not going to help you within the next 2 weeks. You know, it's going to take about a couple of weeks for the immune system to kind of build up the defenses in the army specific to the vaccine when you get it. But after those 2 weeks, there's still going to be a lot of flu in late January, February, and even tailing into March. So there still is a lot of protection that can be obtained. And even with the mismatch, I think a lot of patients are asking me, well, because of this mismatch and not having protection against this new variant, does that mean the vaccine is not effective? It means it's just not as effective at preventing infection altogether, but definitely when we look at studies from the UK and other countries, there are signals that suggest it's going to help keep people out of hospitals or at least minimize the severity of illness, and that's really extremely important.
Because vaccines aren't going to stop you from getting exposed or getting sick, but they're going to teach your body how to fight it, right?
So vaccines help your immune system recognize the virus quicker, right? So if an immune system that's not efficient, that's not able to recognize the virus quickly, it's going to take time to build up the defenses, and that's more time for the immune system or for the virus to be able to cause inflammation and damage in the body. And then later on, an inefficient, dysregulated immune response, less targeted, will occur, and that can bring on a lot of inflammation in addition to the damage the virus is doing. So people can be very sick the later the immune system recognizes specifics about the type of invader it has to fight.
A lot of people are telling me they're getting sick, then they get better, then they get sick again. What is that? Is that common with this type of flu?
So that's a classic thing we see really across all viruses, especially respiratory viruses. Now, what's unique about our respiratory tract, it's kind of open to our environment. And from the tip of our nose down to our last air sac, we have thousands of bacteria hanging out in our airways. They're pretty benign. They're part of our normal airway bacteria. But when we're infected with a respiratory virus, there's a lot of inflammation, and those barriers can be disrupted of the lining of our airways. And so we can get better from the virus and start feeling better, but some bacteria from our airways will start creeping into some of those cracks in our surfaces, and that can cause deeper infections and bacterial pneumonias, bacterial sinus infections, and that's when people start feeling worse. And that's when earlier antibiotics will be very important to prevent serious complications.
Is Tamiflu working on this one?
Yeah, so Tamiflu is going to help with really any influenza virus, but the thing with Tamiflu is that it's got to be taken, the earlier it's taken, the better it's going to be. That first 48 hours really can be the most helpful in minimizing viral replication, which then will minimize the amount of work your immune system has to do, the minimize duration of symptoms, minimize severity, minimize how infectious you might be. But getting it earlier, that's the most important part, and a lot of times people will check later.
We're just about out of time, but quickly, where are flu cases in the hospital that you've seen? Are we seeing them go up? Are we seeing them steady? Where are they?
Yeah, flu cases are continuing to go up each week. I've been in the hospital just before Christmas, the week of New Year's, and it's getting more and more. So our emergency departments are filled throughout the Cleveland Clinic system, patients boarding in the emergency department. Our floors are filled with flu patients predominantly, and the ICUs are now seeing a lot of activity of people with respiratory failure related to flu and complications.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kabaza. So there you go. Take it seriously, and of course, I'm going to go back to wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands.
Yes, always wash your hands. Great information on that, Monica. Thank you so much.
There are late-breaking developments this afternoon involving the flu. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services just a short time ago taking the unprecedented step of dropping the number of vaccines it recommends for children, including flu shots.
Now that announcement comes as the CDC confirmed a new death of an unvaccinated child who died from the flu. The SuperFlu outbreak is hitting hard here in Louisiana and in other parts of the country. News 15's Garrett Tenney with a closer look at the impact across America.
Influenza infections across the nation spiked over the holidays in a flu season that the CDC is classifying as moderately severe. The agency estimates that there have been at least 11 million illnesses, 120,000 hospitalizations, and 5,000 deaths. 9 flu-related pediatric deaths have also been reported so far this season.
There are no normal years. When it arrives with a bang and people get sick.
Some of that unpredictability in the current season comes from a new flu variant dubbed as the SuperFlu. Symptoms can include high fever, body aches, extreme fatigue, and more.
This particular year, that this variant, which is a subvariant of H3N2, it has several mutations in it that make it not a great match with the H3N2 strain that was included in the flu vaccine this year.
More than 90% of H3N2 infections include a Subclade K variant, which wasn't included in this season's flu shots.
When a new strain of virus comes around, there's almost like more severe illness from that.
Still, health experts say it's too early to tell whether the mismatch is a major problem. Despite that, they are urging everyone over the age of 6 months to still get their flu vaccine, which should reduce the risk of severe disease and hospitalization.
Vaccination is still very, very effective, even with the news of this new Subclade K.
Some experts also say holiday travel, misinformation, and low vaccination rates are contributing to the high flu activity. So far, roughly 130 million doses of the flu shot have been given in the U.S. In Chicago, for News 15, I'm Garrett Tenney.
With us now to talk us through is Dr. Amish Idalja, infectious disease specialist. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us to help us understand. I mean, this sounds really serious, and we all want to know, is a flu shot going to cover us? We've got hospitalizations that have doubled in a week. That's according to the CDC. So what makes this strain even more infectious? What is your experience with this?
Well, this strain is a mutated version of one of our seasonal flu strains. And it's important to note that those mutations have now caused a mismatch with the vaccine. So we select strains to put in the vaccine. This one is not covered very well by the vaccine in terms of preventing infection. The vaccine clearly prevents severe disease, hospitalization, and death, but not so much infection. So the population has little immunity to this new strain, and the vaccine doesn't cover it, which makes it very easy for the virus to find new people to infect and move through a population quite rapidly, like we're seeing.
Yeah, and Doctor, I always wonder how this starts in the first place, because more than 32 states and jurisdictions, including here in New York City, with our high population, are seeing high or very high levels of flu activity, and they're not clustered in one specific region. So what do you think is causing the sporadic spreads? Is it because of the holidays and all the travel?
Certainly holidays are a time when viruses exchange themselves with people that live in different parts of the country. But remember, we talk about flu now in January, but there's a whole other half of the globe that has flu season the opposite of ours. So we saw Subclade K emerge at the end of the southern hemisphere's flu season, which would have been our late summer, early fall. And it's found its way around the globe. And it does have to do with travel, interaction with people, places that have big airports. All of those are places where you see flu take off. But overall, we expect the entire country to be engulfed with influenza, like what happens every year.
Right. I mean, it is nothing new, and I know I've heard SuperFlu before, and this so-called SuperFlu is causing even more severe symptoms from what we've been told, and some of these symptoms are, they're overlapping with COVID and other similar illnesses. So what should people do who are trying to figure out which illness they might have? Because, sometimes you go to urgent care and you're like, I think I've got the flu, you get tested, you don't, you go back a week later, you might. How do you figure it out?
You can't figure it out. Even a doctor can't figure out if someone has influenza, RSV, COVID, or a whole host of other respiratory viruses that are circulating. But there are home tests for COVID, and there are also home tests for flu that many people might not know about. So you can take that step at home and test yourself for COVID and flu and help to figure out which treatment pathway you should be on. But they're indistinguishable, all these respiratory viruses.
Well, that's no fun. I mean, we want to have some kind of a solution to figure out what we have. But you're right, the home test can help, and usually it's the same thing. Whenever I call my doctor, he's like, lots of fluid, lots of rest. I mean, that's always the prescription, if you will. And about, when we take a look at the numbers, 43% of children, 44% of adults, 66% of older adults got the flu shot this season. So that's what we've got by the numbers on our screen. When you take a look at that, is that pretty consistent? Is that how that compares to previous seasons?
No, it's a drop from previous season. Okay. It's not a dramatic drop, but it is lower than what we expect each season, and it's much lower than our target rates, where we like those to be, high in the 80s or 90%, especially in the high-risk groups. But remember, even if people see this, they hear about the SuperFlu and the vaccine mismatch, you have to remember that the vaccine is still protective against hospitalization and death. And that's really why we vaccinate against influenza. It's not so much to stop the mild illnesses, it's to stop the severe illnesses. So maybe that is part of why uptake is low, that people think that there's this mismatch. They don't think there's value to the flu vaccine to them individually, but there actually is.
Okay, and it's not too late to get it, right?
No, we haven't reached the peak yet. The traditional peak of influenza season is in February, so there's still some weeks and months to go in this season. And right now, we're dominated by this Subclade K. There are other versions of the flu that are circulating as well, and sometimes at the tail end of a season, we see one of the other strains take the lead. So remember, the vaccine covers 3 different strains of the virus. So there is a lot of value still in that vaccine, even when there's this mismatch.
And can I ask you too, a lot of people worry that when they get the flu shot that it will make them sick. Is that a myth?
Yes, it's a myth. The flu vaccine is one of our safest and least reactogenic shots. You do get some soreness after you've been given the shot in the arm, but you don't really get really systemic symptoms. Remember, people are getting the flu shot in the middle of flu season, in the middle of respiratory virus season. So they often say, oh, I got the flu shot, and the day later I got the flu, but you could have been incubating the flu or incubating a different virus at that time. And the vaccine doesn't contain enough of the virus to really make you sick from the flu. And also remember, it takes about 2 weeks to kick in. It's not some magic force field that automatically turns on as soon as it's in your arm.
That's really important to note. All right, so we're taking a look at the numbers, as I mentioned, and it's hitting very, very hard younger children and older adults. So listen, we've got kids that are going back to school next week after the winter holiday for most of us. What can parents do to protect their kids? I mean, we always yell out the door, wash your hands, but is that enough? Is there anything else we can do?
Washing hands makes a lot of sense. Keeping kids home that are sick also can keep your schools resilient to influenza. For immunocompromised or high-risk kids, they may think about wearing a mask when they're in crowded or congregated places. That will work as well for those who want to do that. But it's very difficult to keep yourself completely free from this virus that's kind of ubiquitous right now. And obviously, having your children vaccinated is one way to minimize the impact of the virus on them.
All right, doctor, I really appreciate all of that insight. That was really helpful. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope that you and your family stay healthy, and to all of us as well. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year.
This article from Fox 5 Atlanta. What the hell is going on there? Pop up. So this article is from Fox 5 Atlanta and come out within the last 24 hours, I think about 18 hours ago at time of recording. Atlanta, pharmacies and hospitals under strain as a SuperFlu spread. Tyler Fingert published January 12, 2026 at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pharmacists feeling impacts of SuperFlu. The brief. Georgia is experiencing a very high flu activity with 29 deaths and 1,600 hospitalizations reported so far this season. A new variant called Subclade K is driving the surge, leading to a high demand for antiviral medications like Tamiflu. Flu season is hitting hard across metro Atlanta, and local pharmacies are feeling the strain as some people search for relief. What we know, Little 5 Points Pharmacy has been especially busy as a wave of illnesses continues to move through Georgia. The pharmacy's owner says that the flu is driving much of the demand, with customers coming in desperate for help. Ira Katz has served the Little 5 Points community for more than 4 decades and says for weeks people have been seeking Tamiflu prescriptions, over-the-counter medications and homeopathic remedies. According to the CDC, Georgia remains in the very high flu activity category. New state data shows more than 400 people have been hospitalized and 6 have died since the last update. Hospital systems across the metro area say they are busy treating flu cases but are not overwhelmed. Health experts continue to urge people to stay at home if they are sick and wash their hands often to help slow the spread. What they are saying, this season seems to be a little worse than we've had in the last couple of seasons, said Katz. I was open on Christmas Day and I would say we filled 20 to 25 prescriptions for the generic Tamiflu. The CDC says that while some indicators it tracks have decreased or remained stable from week to week, it is still too soon to say whether the flu has peaked in Georgia. It seems to have dropped off a little bit as far as getting the Tamiflu, but we're hearing that this season is significantly worse than past seasons. The CDC is blaming a new variant, dubbed by some as the SuperFlu, for the severity of this season. As the virus continues to spread, Katz says vaccination remains critical. It is never too late to get the vaccine. It's the 12th of January. If you haven't got your vaccine, please go ahead and get your vaccine, Katz said. And that is the article. So it was a little bit misleading, as it says they sort of feel the strain, or that they are under strain, but it did say that they are not overwhelmed, which isn't the case in the United Kingdom, as they have already had several hospitals call for critical incidents as a result of not only patients showing up with SuperFlu symptoms, but also the norovirus. And that is what we are going to read about next. So staying in the UK, this article from thesun.co.uk, The Sun being a very popular red top tabloid in the United Kingdom that once used to have famously half-naked girls on page 3. Page 3 girls, probably a thing of the past now. If anyone is in the UK, let me know if the Sun still has page 3 girls displaying their breasts for all to see on the opening page of that newspaper. But this article is very, very interesting. It reads, critical incidents. NHS, National Health Service hospitals beg stay away as 2 bucket winter bug surges at the same time as SuperFlu bounces back. The 2 bucket winter bug is norovirus. There is a video to watch, so let me click on that and we can see what they have to say.
It's also known as the winter vomiting bug. And well, it does what it says on the tin. It classically causes nausea, diarrhea and vomiting, and it can also cause a fever and aches and pains. The incubation period is quite short, 1 or 2 days, and then the symptoms come on really quite quickly and suddenly, and they tend to last a few days. It is extremely contagious. Norovirus is spread by what is called the fecal-oral route, which essentially is that somebody goes to the toilet, maybe isn't quite perfect at washing their hands or touches their mouth after they've been sick and isn't quite perfect at washing their hands, and then they touch the door handle that you then touch, and then you touch your mouth, and it can be transmitted or by close contact or by eating food or drink that's shared by somebody who has norovirus or sharing cutlery. But it is really quite contagious. Now, the key to managing if you do have norovirus and diarrhea and vomiting is to keep up your fluid intake. We need to replace at the top end anything that you might be losing at the bottom end through diarrhea or through vomiting. And you can use water or other liquids, or you can use oral rehydration salts, which are available over the counter. It's also important that you rest, and you should recover within a few days. The guidance is that if you have diarrhea or vomiting of whatever cause, that you stay off and home from work or school for 48 hours after your last episode of diarrhea or vomiting. And that's because even though you feel better, you still might be shedding the virus during that time, and so could still spread it. The best way to try and prevent getting norovirus is good hand hygiene, and by that I mean with warm water, hot water and soap, and not with alcohol gel, because alcohol hand gel does not kill norovirus. So good hand hygiene, and make sure that you keep up the fluids if you do get the infection. Remember, if you feel more unwell, please seek medical advice, and these health videos are just for generalized health information only. They are not supposed to replace the personalized medical advice that you can get from a healthcare professional. If you would like more health information and health news, please visit www.thesun.co.uk/health, and perhaps follow The Sun's YouTube health channel at The Sun Health.
No, we won't be watching any more videos from The Sun Health, but thank you for that. But the article starts out by saying, as winter drags on, the rapid spread of winter bugs show no signs of slowing down. Now, in particular, why we are including this article, which is prominently about norovirus, is because in a previous video, possibly in a couple of previous Subclade K and the norovirus video, I did mention that what happens if you contract the two illnesses at the same time? And of course, we also now have the rise of Candida auroris, which is untreatable and does have a pretty high death fatality rate as opposed to Subclade or to the flu or to norovirus, which do give you very unpleasant symptoms but are survivable. Not the case so much with Candida auroris, but as I said, what happens if you contract the two together? And what we are now reading or hearing in this article, that hospitals are indeed in the United Kingdom being overwhelmed and overrun with people reporting both of these winter bugs that are currently circulating. But back to the article, a surge in SuperFlu and a stomach bug nicknamed the two bucket. What the fuck's going on there? Strange goings on with my browser, but there you go. A surge in SuperFlu and a stomach bug nicknamed the two bucket disease has led to several National Health Service hospital trusts in England declaring critical incidents. And as I said, guys, once you start hearing hospitals declaring critical incidents, it isn't that far removed from entering into the territory of epidemics. But as the cases of the bugs strain already stretched services, the stomach bug can cause diarrhea and projectile vomiting, often at the same time. How unfortunate is that? Which has earned it the nickname of the two bucket disease. Nottingham University Hospitals is the latest to sound a critical incident, saying staff are working tirelessly as huge pressure on A&E sees ambulances queue and patients face long waits. 3 Surrey trusts, Royal Surrey NHS Foundation, Trust Epsom and St Helier University Hospitals NHS Trust, and Surrey and Sussex Healthcare NHS Trust have also declared critical incidents. So sort of 4 major centres in the United Kingdom are declaring critical incidents as a result of being overwhelmed with individuals showing up with these two winter bugs. Meanwhile, in Margate, East Kent Hospitals University Foundation Trust has also declared a critical incident due to sustained pressures at the Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother Hospital. The NHS Surrey Heartland said its hospitals were experiencing exceptionally high demand driven by a continued high admission rate and large number of patients with winter illnesses and respiratory viruses. And there's a clickbait there. NHS swamped, clinical incidents declared, bugbear, stay home alert as SuperFlu collides. So there you go, guys. I've warned you this would happen. If if these two diseases and bugs come in contact with each other. And now we're hearing stay away from hospitals and stay home coming out of the United Kingdom. Beds across our hospitals, back to the article, are currently full. And attendance at our emergency departments is extremely high, meaning there is very limited capacity to admit further patients who need acute care, the Trust added. Complicated A&E admissions, as well as problems discharging patients ready to leave hospital, are also to blame for the lack of beds. Across the country, other critical incidents have also been declared. In Birmingham and in Staffordshire, trusts have said they are suffering sustained pressure. Sustained pressure is in brackets there. I'm sure that is going to be a buzz phrase we will possibly be hearing a lot of in future news reels. But they are also having a difficulty coping with the significant increase of the stomach bug norovirus. There's some more clickbait there for you. But Cwmtath Morgwan, that's from Wales. Welsh is a very strange language. Sometimes if you do try to sort of put a Welsh accent on some of these words, you do tend to end up sounding Indian, so we're not going to do that. We don't want to offend anybody here if we can help it. Health Board in Wales asked people not to attend the hospitals if they have had diarrhea and or vomiting in the last 48 hours. It is also asked that people not visit if they have been caring for someone with the same symptoms over a 72-hour period. There's another video there, I believe, a mutant flu chaos, but we won't watch that. This comes just weeks. Jesus, it's done it again. Why does it do this? Sorry about that, guys. I cannot control the behavioral patterns of my algorithm. It does seem to have a mind of its own. Need acute care. I forgot where we were now. Birmingham and Staffordshire, we read that. There was those clickbaits. The Welsh person. So there was a video we didn't want to watch. This comes just weeks after a wave of SuperFlu tore through the country, forcing schools to shut down and hundreds of people to fall sick in what experts warn could be the worst outbreak in a decade. Dubbed Subclade K or the SuperFlu, it mutated 7 times over the summer, helping it evade previous immunity, sparking alarm among experts. Surveillance programs that monitor England's outbreak trends show both SuperFlu and the norovirus cases are rising. Last week, 230 infections of the stomach bug were recorded, up 22% on the previous report when 188 were logged. And those aren't really like alarming numbers if that is for the entire United Kingdom, because you know the United Kingdom isn't as big as the United States, but you know, numbers under 1,000 is really, you know, a drop in the ocean. But the virus proved most common among people aged 65 and over, one of the groups most vulnerable to winter infections. Meanwhile, flu hospitalizations jumped nearly 10% in a week in the United Kingdom. So what are the 7 symptoms of norovirus? They're not pleasant and twofold. Normally, norovirus causes 7 symptoms, which include diarrhea and projectile vomiting, often at the same time, which has earned it the nickname of the 2-bucket disease. This is accompanied by stomach cramps, muscle aches, feeling sick, headache, and a fever. And in small children, it can also cause seizures linked to having a high fever. And there is a little graphic of the 7 symptoms that you may experience if you have norovirus. How it spreads. Norovirus is usually spread through close contact with somebody who is infected, or by touching surfaces or objects, or eating food someone infected has touched. Health chiefs already advise against relying on hand sanitizers alone to guard against transmission. And then this is another thing, because you know, back during the pandemic, Everyone was told to use hand sanitizer, and the hand sanitizer, it does nothing against the norovirus. And again, you know, the vaccine was there to protect people from getting COVID-19. This time around, they're saying the vaccine may work, but it's unlikely to, and they're also telling us now. So it's very, very different, although there are many, many echoes of the pandemic, and now, you know, sort of how the pandemic, you know, unfolded. The stories are very, very similar to the ones we're hearing now. The only difference is hand sanitizer and the vaccines, they are telling us, are not effective against this latest SuperFlu outbreak. And also now you have to contend with norovirus, and I believe that is also running rampant a little bit in the United States. So how much longer is it going to be before we hear that United States hospitals and health providers are becoming overrun with people that are also experiencing symptoms of norovirus? And as I've mentioned, folks, what if you get the two together? But most of those infected suffer nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting, and they recover at home. What do you do if you have norovirus? If you have it, stay at home until the symptoms go away. You know, pretty straightforward, common sense there, really. Although I wouldn't imagine most people would say, "Hey, I've got the shits and I've got the vomiting going on. I'm going to go out and sort of hang out at the shopping mall, maybe go to the amusement arcade, watch a movie or two at the multiplex, maybe do some 10-pin bowling." Maybe go out to an all-you-can-eat buffet and touch lots of food. I'm pretty sure people don't do those things. I'm sure most folks do stay at home if they are sick, although that is not always the case, because I know employers are not very sympathetic sometimes to people who are sick. But the National Health Service recommends that you avoid cooking meals for the rest of the household, as you might make them sick. Avoid sharing everyday items like towels, bedding, and dishes. Eat bland and non-spicy foods to not irritate your stomach, and stay hydrated. Take medication for pain relief. In most cases, you won't need to go to a doctor, but if the symptoms persist for longer than 3 days, it's important to see one. The 5 everyday mistakes putting you at greater risk of norovirus. Cases of the sickness bug norovirus have increased over the last few weeks. Norovirus spreads very easily through close contact as well as contaminated food surfaces and food, so sometimes you simply won't be able to evade it. However, there are some easy ways to protect yourself from the dreaded bug, according to 2 experts. And importantly, try to avoid making these 5 mistakes. Poor hand hygiene, the wrong cleaning products, food preparation error, poor sickness protocol. If you're ill, cleaning up properly is crucial. Scrub thoroughly and clean promptly to prevent any further contamination, the expert explains. Do not share towels, cutlery, or phones. But there you go. That is at the end of that article. As I said, it wasn't primarily about the SuperFlu. It was about norovirus, but it is both of these things we have covered on this channel, as they do seem to be developing week to week, and the numbers do begin to increase. But there we hear that the United Kingdom, multiple hospitals and health providers are declaring critical incidents and are becoming overwhelmed and overrun with influenza and norovirus patients. So let's go and see what we can find next. So, jumping from the United Kingdom to another Commonwealth nation, Australia, sbsnews.com.au. And we include this because we do have an Australian contingent of viewers. Health, the Super K flu variant is spreading in Australia, and here is what makes it unusual. Now, by all accounts, correct me if you are watching Tranquil Vortex, I believe the flu season would have finished in Australia, but Subclade K is on the rise, and otherwise known as, let me start that again, the Super K flu, otherwise known as the Subclade K variant, is spreading around the globe and including Australia. And it's also interesting is some places are starting to call it Super K. I believe we had an article or a newsreel in the last video on Subclade K where they were referring referring to it as Superclade, and I suggested at the time, is that the rebrand, or was it a mistake in the auto cue, typo error perhaps? But it is now spreading across Australia. Published 11th of January 2026 at 11:13 a.m. A new strain of influenza known as Super K, or the Subclade K variant, could be responsible for an unusual spring and summer boost in flu cases. It's summertime in the southern hemisphere now, so the Australians are now bracing themselves for a southern summer surge of influenza. But the unusual thing here for Australia is the timing. WHO, World Health Organization Collaborating Center for Reference and Research on Influenza Director Patrick Redding told SBS News the not unusual thing is probably the symptoms, he said. Redding recalls the Subclade K variant emerged towards the end of Australia and New Zealand's typical flu season, circulating in September rather than the winter months. And that was responsible for elevated influenza cases throughout the spring, actually throughout the start of our summer in December as well. According to the Global Initiative on Sharing All Influenza Data, there's an interesting organization we should probably look into at some point, the GISAID told the Total Lab that confirmed cases of Subclade K in Australia so far currently sits at 1,083, which again, Australia is pretty large, although it isn't very highly populated for the size of that nation, but only 1,000 cases isn't that many. But a new report by the Australian Centre for Disease Control stated that Subclade K's rapid spread has the potential to put increased pressure on Australian healthcare services over the summer and into the 2026 influenza season. Current case numbers for influenza are higher than usual for this time of year compared to previous seasons, the Australian CDC spokesperson said. So far this year, over 4,100 cases of influenza have been confirmed by laboratories, with the true number of flu cases likely to be higher. By comparison, in the first quarter of last year, an average of around 33,300, I was going to say 3,300, but 3,300 cases, 33, were confirmed weekly. What was the cause of the Subclade K flu variant? Every few decades, a flu virus can undergo a much larger genetic challenge called antigenic shift, which can lead to a pandemic. But this is not what has happened with Super K. University of South Australia epidemiology professor Adrian Easterman said instead, Super K is best understood as a drifted version of the familiar H3N2 virus with enough changes to allow it to spread more widely in populations with existing immunity. The ACDC report noted Australian Subclade K viruses may have originated or been imported from the United States, which we heard about in an opening article in this video, that it was first traced to New York State before popping up in another couple of states before traversing the globe and going down under and causing some problems in Australia and New Zealand. But it had been imported from the United States following detections in the United States in June and July of last year. Redding said there's no current evidence that the variant is more severe than regular flu. What experts are seeing, however, is it easily transmits. It appears that it's probably going to have an ability to at least be slightly less sensitive to antibody or vaccine-mediated protection, he said. Deakin University epidemiology professor Catherine Bennett told SBS News this new subvariant of the H3N2 flu is a bit more immune evasive with these latest mutations in the part of the virus that allows it to evade our cells, making us more susceptible. Bennett said that the 2025 flu vaccine included H3N3, but not this specific class. Flu vaccines wane in effectiveness, so people vaccinated back in April, May, and only getting infected now won't have the same benefit, she said. However, the 2026 flu vaccine for the Southern Hemisphere has already been updated to include this variant. So lo and behold, in the Southern Hemisphere, they are preparing to include Subclade K in the new vaccine, which I guess will be available when the flu season comes around again in the Southern Hemisphere. But for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, no such luck, although maybe they could send some of those that are intended for the Southern Hemisphere our way if it gets particularly worse. Again, make of it what you will, folks. Only you can decide what is the best course of action to take regarding any illnesses or viruses that you may be unfortunate enough to contract. We do not give medical advice here at this channel, as we are not medical experts. We just provide information for educational and conversational purposes. But what does a typical flu season look like in Australia? When you get seasonal influenza every year in Australia or anywhere, it's a combination of 3 viruses, said Redding. There are 2 influenza A viruses and 1 influenza B. According to the Australian CDC, there were 365,261 reports of the flu in 2024. And cases spiked between May and August and drastically dropped following the winter. There are some charts of the flu figures in Australia, but as we move into spring, flu generally comes down in Australia and then it's very low during summer. Last year there were 502,493 reports of influenza, with cases clearly continuing until the end of the year following those winter months. According to GISAID, H3N2 Subclade K is driving an estimated 90% of the cases in the USA. What we saw around September in Australia and onwards is the H1N1 and the B viruses decreased, but we saw an increase in Subclade K. How can I avoid catching the flu? People who are unwell should consider testing and should avoid mixing with other people as much as possible. Bennett said, keep in homes well ventilated, hold gatherings outdoors if possible, wear a mask in busy public indoor spaces if susceptible to more severe respiratory infections. So there you go, guys. There's a little bit of Australian news regarding this SuperFlu Subclade K. Now there are other articles circulating. There's stories coming out of Argentina, the Philippines, Jakarta. They've had some deaths there reported, and we could go into some great depths with these articles, but many of them, as we do know and have seen, are reading very much from the same script. So what we're going to do now is head over to a few more videos and I will see you back in the virtual basement to wrap things up.
Well, flu cases in the U.S. are now at their highest levels on record. That's going back to the late 90s. As this new super variant continues to spread across the country, the CDC has already reported more than 11 million cases so far this season. So here's what it looks like in Minnesota. Hospitalizations have surged to more than 1,900 so far this season. And we're seeing significant increases in schools and long-term care facilities here as well, especially compared to last year, with 176 outbreaks in schools, 31 at those long-term care facilities. Fox's Asher Red tracking these trends for us, joining us live now from the CDC headquarters in Atlanta. So Asher, the agency says it sounds like things got a lot worse during the Christmas holiday.
Well, Amy, right now, 30 states are in the CDC's top tier for the flu virus. Now, the agency says that flu cases increased by 33% during Christmas week between December 20th and December 27th. Now, states in the Northeast, the South, and the Midwest are reporting very high flu activity. But so far this season, the CDC has reported about 11 million flu cases so far. The flu has put about 120,000 people in the hospital, and it's already killed about 5,000 2,000 people. Doctors say many of these cases are linked to a highly contagious flu strain called Subclade K.
The body, when it encounters the flu or a different virus, builds up some amount of immunity. What's unique about this season's flu is that it is very different from different flus that we've seen previously. So immunity that people might have from previous infections or from previous vaccines is not as helpful.
Even as cases and hospitalizations are surging, the CDC says the number of people who have gotten a flu shot this year is pretty much the same as previous years. According to the most recent data released before mid-December, health officials say about 40% of Americans had gotten a flu shot. But this year's flu vaccine won't completely protect people against that new variant they're calling Subclade K.
They include multiple strains of flu in the vaccine. So they try to predict, based on what's happened before, what's more likely to cause the most severe flu outbreaks in the following year and get that into the vaccine. It doesn't seem to be providing as much protection for typical flu symptoms as we would like to see.
And doctors expect the flu to keep spreading in the near weeks, and they also are warning people that this year's peak may still have not been reached yet. Amy?
And Asher, we're seeing a big impact here in our schools. Are a lot of these cases among sort of younger people, kids?
Well, the CDC says about a third of the flu-related outpatient visits were of people younger than 24 years old, and about 20% of those were kids under the age of 5.
Wow. All right. Asher read for us in Atlanta tonight. Thank you.
Officials sounding the alarm about a rapid escalation in flu cases nationwide as CDC data suggests most states are now experiencing high or very high flu activity, and it's all happening with the peak of flu season still to come.
With more, we are joined by Dr. Anne Vermoyen. Happy New Year to you, professor of epidemiology at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. Let's jump right into it. You know, flu cases are on the upswing nationwide, while some states, including New York, are reporting record-breaking number of flu-related hospitalizations in a single week. Can you tell us, Dr. Vermoyen, what's driving these upswings? And really, from your perspective, is there cause for concern?
Well, hi and Happy New Year. It's good to be here, and it's a good time to talk about flu because, as you said, we're starting to see cases really rise. They're taking off after the holidays. We had everybody gathering together, a lot of travel. It's not surprising, and this is actually following a very common pattern that we see generally every year, and actually really consistent with what we saw in the Southern Hemisphere. We have to remember that they have a flu season before us, and we saw a very similar season driven by the same variant that we're seeing. And so cases rising rapidly, a lot of hospitalizations, but not seeing more severe cases than we normally see. So that's really important.
What do we know about this variant of the flu, which is being dubbed a SuperFlu?
Well, this is a new variant that is just more contagious than previous variants that we've seen. However, it's not something that we've never seen circulate before. It's a subvariant of the H3N2. It just means it's evolved over time. It's spreading a little bit more efficiently as we see viruses change over time. So it's just we haven't been exposed to this one in a while. We're seeing a lot more cases, and that's why people are suggesting that it's a super flu. But it is not more severe. It's not causing more hospitalizations and deaths than we would normally see in a flu year.
Okay, so the go-to question, especially after many of us spent the holidays indoors, surrounded by family and friends, we know to wash our hands and mask up, but with over 7.5 million people already infected this flu season, what can we do if we start to feel sick?
There are so many things that you can do to prevent respiratory infections, and flu being top of the list. Hand washing, it really does matter. You know, those doorknobs, handrails, things where you have lots of people touching them. I am very, very careful when I'm out. If I'm touching them, I really make an effort to wash my hands after that. It doesn't just eliminate flu, you know, norovirus, another pathogen we want to avoid, also very good at avoiding that. You know, and if you have, for example, you have a party at your house, you have lots of people that have come over, I would do a nice little like quick wash of the doorknobs and the high touch surfaces, very easy to do. and it's not too late to get your flu shot. The flu shot, while not going to be perfect, it certainly does what it's really supposed to do, which is reduce hospitalizations and deaths. It's like a seatbelt, right? It doesn't prevent an accident, but it certainly can prevent the most serious of consequences.
All right, so from the flu, let's turn to the persistent and growing threat of measles. We've been talking about this with you in recent months. More than 2,000 cases reported in the U.S. last year, and an uptick in cases in South Carolina has now put the U.S. at risk of losing its elimination status.
Well, you're right. Now, when we say losing its elimination status, it doesn't mean that we're going to be seeing measles everywhere now. It means that we have now reached the threshold where we have not been able where we've now seen consistent transmission over a year period. And so that's like a really important moment where we say, okay, measles is now something that is much more common in this country. And so that's what it means to lose our measles endemic, or to lose our measles elimination status. But, measles is a really important virus to consider, and it isn't just a rash. It can create a lot of secondary side effects, and that includes something that we call immune amnesia, which basically means it just wipes out your all of your immunity that you've had to other viruses that you have built up over time. And that's why after you see a big measles outbreak, that people become more susceptible to other things. So, it's really important to be protected against measles, and the best way to do that is vaccination. There's a very effective vaccine, but you need up to 95% of the population vaccinated to really be able to prevent spread through the population. And because measles vaccination rates have gone down, that's why we're really seeing so many cases out there.
So your colleagues have also come out at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health with a new report today about the health risks from smoke damage in the wildfire burn zones. They found that the levels of some of the volatile organic compounds were higher post-fire than when the fire was actually burning. Your take on these findings and what folks can do to protect themselves from exposure to contaminants in the air?
It's a really important study by colleagues at UCLA. And what's really important here is that it highlights something that a lot of people don't realize, which is that the health risks don't necessarily end when the fire is out or when outdoor air improves. In fact, the study showed that what's usually overlooked is that burnt and smoked damaged materials inside the house can continue to release harmful chemicals. So people should really, think about this. It's not just what's happening outdoors, it's what's happened indoors. And so there are things that people can do. You can focus on good ventilation using HEPA air filters and make sure that HVAC filters are up to date. It's really just an important study that landmarks this very interesting and important point that it isn't just about outdoor air quality, it's about what's happening inside as well.
Good point. Dr. Anne Remoyne, professor of epidemiology at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. Always good to see you. Happy New Year. Be well.
Happy New Year. Thanks so much.
Well, we are officially in the thick of the flu season. It seems like we all know someone who's sick these days.
I think we all know several people that have been sick these days. In fact, the New York City Health Department says the virus continues to circulate at alarming rates. Jenna DeAngelis has more now on the impact across New York.
This is one of the worst flu seasons I can remember.
And Ralph Ekstrand has been a pharmacist 45 years. Keeping busy at Farmingdale's Moby Drugs as many fight the flu.
We've done just under 90 prescriptions in 3 hours, and about 20 of those prescriptions were for flu cases.
They're also selling a lot of over-the-counter meds, but he says a popular item has been the at-home flu tests.
We sold out and we can't get any more.
Urgent care centers are also extremely busy. CityMDs across New York are seeing about a 30% increase in patient volume, largely due to the uptick in flu.
The big difference this season is that we're seeing patients coming in, far more sick.
CityMD Clinical Chief Dr. Jason Idelson stresses the importance of seeking medical care right away.
There are some really, really good medications, antiviral medicines that if taken within the first 48 hours will make them better. It will decrease severity of symptoms, duration of symptoms, and I think The key is it also decreases hospitalizations.
At a time, flu hospitalizations in New York are high. The latest state data, the week of Christmas, shows a 24% increase from the week prior.
As of the week ending January 3rd, more than 128,000 New Yorkers have tested positive for flu so far this season.
Surpassing numbers at this point the past 2 flu seasons. While the New York City Health Commissioner says cases are on the decline, she stresses the flu is unpredictable, so we're not out of the woods yet. Also emphasizing vaccination helps prevent serious illness.
Last respiratory viral season set an unfortunate record for cases of pediatric flu deaths. 89% of children who were eligible to get the flu vaccine had not been vaccinated.
Despite all of the confusion at the federal level, our recommendations have not changed. Everyone 6 months and older should get vaccinated.
It's not too late. Jenna DeAngelis, CBS News, New York.
The city health department also noted that respiratory virus season arrived earlier than usual, with a significant number of flu cases reporting starting back in October. And one other quick note, flu season, well, it can last until May.
Thank you. Now to a health alert as Syracuse hospitals are being overwhelmed by flu cases. Upstate says since December 1st, it's seen 315 pediatric and adult flu admissions. Same time last year, 72 total cases. News Channel 9's Ellie Elkins tells us more about when to stay home or when to seek medical care if you do have the flu.
With a slightly more severe flu strain racing through central New York, Syracuse hospitals are feeling the crush.
2 of our 3 major hospitals have activated incident command, indicating that they are seeing patient loads beyond what they can reasonably handle.
And maybe unnecessarily. Dr. Anderson says most cases can be dealt with at home.
Most of the time you get the flu, you don't need to seek care at all. Most flu is mild to moderate.
Saving the care for those who need it most.
If you go to the emergency room and you don't need to be there, it adds to the wait times. It takes up a bed for people who may be having heart attacks, may be having a stroke, or may have severe flu and really need to see a doctor.
But some people at high risk should go to the doctor. Anyone who's pregnant, young children under 2, adults 65 or older, and people with any heart or lung diseases, as well as diabetes or any other conditions that may weaken their immune system. Other symptoms like difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, pain in your chest, changes in thinking, dizziness, or vomiting could warrant a hospital visit too. In Syracuse, Allie Okins, News Channel 9.
And Dr. Anderson also says it's not too late to get your flu shot. Adding in central New York, only about 30% of people overall have gotten the flu vaccine. For seniors, it's just a little bit higher, but that number is still only about 50 to 60%.
The latest flu numbers are in. The CDC shows Georgia remains in the extremely high category, even as some indicators show signs of leveling off nationwide. Emergency crews in our area say they're feeling the impact firsthand with a sharp spike in flu-related 911 calls. Fox 5's Tyler Fingert is live outside the CDC with these new numbers. Tyler?
Yeah, Courtney, good evening to you. The CDC's new flu report says some indicators have dropped while others stayed flat this week. But they say because of the holidays, they can't say for sure if the surge is over in Georgia.
With flu activity extremely high, EMTs and paramedics at American Medical Response in DeKalb County say they've handled more flu-related 911 calls than usual this sick season.
This is one of the most difficult flu seasons that I've seen in a long time.
AMR manager Israel Contreras says crews in DeKalb are busier than last flu season.
We had an increase of about 60% of flu-like symptom calls, including whatever range of flu-like symptoms, fevers, headaches, malaise, all of those things.
What AMR has seen in DeKalb reflects what the CDC says is happening around the country. In a new report out Friday, the CDC estimates at least 15 million people have gotten sick this season. That has resulted in 180,000 hospitalizations and 7,400 deaths. The CDC says while indicators have decreased or remained stable this week, it's unclear if we've peaked or if the holidays played a role in the numbers. In DeKalb, Contreras says the calls are adding up.
We have to be ready for any kind of emergency that's happening. And so when we have an increase of this nature, we we get delayed because we tax the hospital, so now we're delayed at the hospitals.
Contreras says a good percentage of the flu-related calls were non-emergencies that could be treated at home. AMR says the biggest concern is when symptoms become severe, like trouble breathing and chest pain, or if symptoms improve, then return with a high fever.
I'm not trying to discourage people from calling 911 when they feel like they have an actual life-threatening emergency. I just want people to evaluate whether they actually are having a life-threatening emergency.
The CDC says a new variant some have dubbed the SuperFlu is to blame for this season. The doctors recommend everyone get a flu shot, and if you're sick, stay home. We're live in DeKalb County, outside the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Tyler Fingert, Fox 5 News.
All right, all good advice. Tyler, thanks.
And new here at 4:30, flu cases in Illinois and across the nation continue to surge. The CDC announced new weekly numbers today, and they're not good. See all those dark colors? The dark colors are not good. So take a look. Most of the Midwest and Illinois respiratory illness activity level is high and listed as high. And you can see, once we did have that map up, where that red and orange is, that means flu activity in Illinois is listed as very high. See these numbers here, orange, red, all in the high area, so not good. The updates were posted today on Illinois' seasonal illness respiratory dashboard. Compared to last week, hospitalizations linked to the flu are up by more than 5%. Also, significantly, more people are being admitted to the ICU with the flu compared to COVID and RSV. And look at this reading in red. It shows the flu is hitting children the hardest, with ages 5 to 17 hospitalized with the flu more than any other age group. And as NBC5's Christian Farr explains, we're not even at the peak of flu season.
I couldn't leave the house for a week. I'm cold, very cold. I feel cold and tired and aching.
Masada Ramley says she just recovered from having a pretty bad case of the flu. And Bob Armalis also knows what it is like to suffer from the contagious respiratory illness.
I was probably in my 30s. I couldn't hold anything down and dehydrated. That can be pretty serious in a young person, let alone somebody over 65.
Both Bob and Masada are patients of Dr. Nesreen Hermes, who runs Hermes Health in Oak Park. Dr. Hermes says this season influenza is on the rise in Illinois and nationwide.
In the past 30 days, we've had about 500 sick visits, and of the people that we've been testing, we have been seeing flu dominating the virus that's been causing upper respiratory symptoms this year.
The CDC also says that the flu has been elevated this season, and hospitalization rates have been the second highest since the 2010-2011 flu season.
The typical symptoms of flu are fever, chills, body aches. There are different variations according to people's anatomy of their sinuses, their ears, if they're younger, if they're older.
Even though it's January, doctors say it is not too late to get the flu vaccine.
I highly recommend vaccinating today. This morning, just from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 5 people got their vaccination just within 1 hour.
Masada and Bob were vaccinated months ago, and Masada credits her flu vaccination with keeping her out of the hospital.
Just take the vaccine all the time before it gets cold even.
With all the flu going around, why wait?
In Oak Park, Christian Farr, NBC 5 News.
No doubt. A lot of wash those hands, stay away from folks that are sick, all the things we learned during COVID, right?
2 of our 3 major hospitals have activated incident command, indicating that they are seeing patient loads beyond what they can reasonably handle and what their staff can reasonably handle.
It's considered to be one of the worst flu seasons the area has seen in a long time. Most of the patients hospitals are seeing are due to flu-related causes. Health Commissioner Dr. Catherine Anderson says in most cases, if you do get the flu, you don't need to seek medical care.
Most flu is mild to moderate, and people will recover on their own within 5 to 7 days with rest, hydration, and over-the-counter medications.
Although, if you are high risk, which is children under 2, the elderly, and those that are pregnant, you should be seeing a doctor, but not the emergency room. A visit to the emergency room is if you're having difficulty breathing, chest pains, dizziness, and vomiting.
But if you go to the emergency room and you don't need to be there, it adds to the wait times. It takes up a bed for people who may be having heart attacks, may be having a stroke, or may have severe flu and really need to see a doctor.
Flu vaccines in central New York are down this year, but Anderson does still encourage folks to get the shot.
I've had my flu shots. I try to stay healthy.
The best advice is if you are feeling ill, stay home and rest.
I did have like a sinus headache and some sneezing earlier in the week, but I didn't have a fever, but I kind of laid low, stayed out of the restaurants.
And if you do get the flu, it is recommended to stay home and hydrate to prevent that illness from getting worse or from spreading it. In Syracuse, I'm Hannah Devani.
That's a lot of advice to take in, but important because it seems like everybody knows somebody affected by the flu right now. Thank you, Hannah.
A developing story we're following tonight. A new strain of the flu is spreading across the country, and doctors say it could be even more dangerous than in years past. East Texas health officials warned that the H3N2 variant is causing more severe symptoms, especially for children and older adults. CBS 19's Ayana Aird has more on what you need to know.
This year, a new influenza variant H3N2 is posing a serious risk to people across the country. Health officials say this strand is more resistant to the current flu vaccine.
But those who are vaccinated can also have more symptoms with this one. It's why it can be a little more dangerous for young kids and for older people as well.
Dr. Anna Block with UT Health East Texas says they have seen an increase in cases across East Texas since December.
The symptoms are more evident, like flu-like symptoms, which are nasal congestion, coughing, runny nose.
She says there has already been a reported child death this year.
For kids, young kids and older people, they have less resistance to the viral infection. So they need to seek their medical providers more as soon as they have any symptoms.
The easiest ways to prevent the spread includes washing your hands, covering your cough, and seeking medical care if you start to feel sick.
Or one of your people in your house feeling sick, flu-like symptoms including nasal congestion, cough, sneezing,
or any other flu-like symptoms. It's important to contact your medical provider.
So it's not too late. Go and have your vaccine if you didn't get it yet.
For CBS 19, I'm Ayana Aird.
Health officials say the season usually peaks in January and February and can last into March.
The Department of Health is sounding the alarm about the spread of the flu and other respiratory viruses in our state. Since September, 7 people have died from the flu in Maryland, and more than 1,900 people with lab-confirmed flu have been hospitalized, with respiratory virus-associated hospitalization now exceeding 10 per every 100,000 state residents. The department recommends healthcare facilities institute masking for patients and also for staff because of the high transmission levels. The health department says cases have surged more rapidly than this time last year. And as flu cases soar nationwide, today, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services took the unprecedented step of dropping the number of vaccines it recommends for every child, leaving immunizations, including flu shots, open to families to choose what they want to do. However, this does not mean families will lose access to the vaccines. Experts say this new guidance could cause even more confusion for parents who have young children.
Well, if you don't... Flu season is in full swing, and it's causing more congestion in emergency rooms across the province. That could be longer wait times to get treatment. Those making a trip to the ER are told to pack their patients. You could be seeing waits up to 10 hours or more. CTV's Krista Simpson joins us live with more on this tonight. Krista, we talked with hospitals in Waterloo Region and Guelph, and they seem to be saying the same thing.
It's extremely busy, no matter which emergency room you go to, Leanne, and the flu could be to blame. Officials say it has been especially busy the last 3 weeks or so, and it seems like this trend isn't slowing down anytime soon.
For many people, the start of 2026 came with sickness, flu-like symptoms sending some to the hospital.
We have seen an influx and probably about a 10 to 15% increase in total volumes in our emergency department, a good portion of which are represented by respiratory illness.
And that's leading to longer than normal wait times at Guelph General Hospital.
We have seen movement from hours to several hours, up into the 10 to 12 in some cases.
It's the same story in Waterloo Region. The latest numbers from Public Health show 113 new cases of influenza during the week of December 28th to January 3rd.
Influenza A
is primarily what we're seeing. And so really, that can affect complex medical patients, patients that are a bit elderly, even our really young patients can be affected quite significantly by influenza A.
Cambridge Memorial Hospital staff say their hands are full too.
We're seeing about 135 to 140 patients a day. We generally see about 130 or so our volumes have increased. We've opened additional beds in the hospital. We have about 30 additional spaces open currently, so we can relieve some of that pressure in the emergency department.
The Waterloo Regional Health Network is reminding people not every case of the flu requires an emergency room visit.
Your primary care physician, urgent care clinics, the pharmacies can also support as well. And then also your emergency department, if you feel that your symptoms are sort of uncontrolled with maybe, standard wellness techniques.
Health officials stress it is not too late to get your flu shot, even though it will take a few weeks to gain some immunity. Leanne.
Okay, Krista, thanks for that. CTV's Krista Simpson joining us live this hour.
A more infectious variant of the flu virus spreading in the Philippines, but medical experts say there is no reason to panic. Rafael Bosano with the details.
The bug that's been hitting a lot of people the past couple of weeks may very well continue until February. According to infectious disease specialist Dr. Ronjin Solante, major factor in the surge is the SuperFlu, formerly known as Subclade K of influenza A. While the name sounds daunting, Solante notes that its symptoms remain largely the same as other flu variants.
In terms of the length of the symptoms, more or less pare-pareho lang yan, no? Ganun naman talaga ang influenza. Sometimes it can last more than 10 days, even up to 2 weeks, no? Especially for those who will not resting, who still are going out and are still working. There, you are always prone to relapse.
The World Health Organization reports that Subclade K has been detected in over 30 countries in the last 6 months, including the Philippines. Local data reflects this trend. Out of 283 influenza A samples sequenced in the country between January and October 2025, 55 were identified as AH3N2. Of those specific cases, 7 out of every 10 were found to be Subclade K. What sets this variant apart are 9 specific mutations not found in ordinary AH3N2. While mutations are a natural part of a virus's evolution, Solante warns these changes may impact how easily the virus spreads and how well our current vaccines hold up.
Most countries now in globally are seeing a lot of these patients admitted because of the Subclade K, and yung iba pang ang bansa, mas maaga ang pagtaas ng mga influenza-like illnesses nila, no? So it affect the transmission, mas nakakahawa, at yung mga walang bakuna mas lalong nahawaan.
The good news, a recent study from England shows that existing vaccines remain highly effective against the variant, specifically in protecting children from hospitalization. While the protection rate for adults is slightly lower, ranging between 32 to 39%, experts emphasize that it still significantly reduces the risk of severe illness. Because of this, health authorities continue to urge the public to get their flu shots. Health Secretary Ted Herbosa issues a specific reminder for Filipinos planning to travel abroad.
The warning I will give is for Filipinos that will travel to the temperate countries, that will go to North America, to the UK. If you're going there, be knowledgeable that there is a spread of SuperFlu in that area. Maybe get the Northern Hemisphere vaccine, not the Southern Hemisphere shot.
Despite the continued spread of Subclade K, medical experts assure the public there is no reason to panic, provided basic health protocols are followed. And this includes the practice of wearing face masks when feeling unwell or when entering densely populated indoor spaces. Rafael Bosano, ABS-CBN News.
So there you have it, and there you go, folks. That concludes yet another installment of unwatchable content. Hopefully those of you who have made it this far into the video have found it informative and interesting, and maybe even a little bit educational. Probably not though. But it has been yet another Subclade K related video here at NoOneWatchesArDee, and please do not think that I'm just putting these videos out for clickbait or for views, because clearly, check out my views, they're not exactly that impressive. I've only had a couple of views videos in the last sort of few weeks that have surpassed triple digits. The majority of them get 60-70 views if I am lucky. So we're not out to create content just for views, just for clicks. We do create content, or I do create content to, you know, provide information and something of interest for the few people that do watch. And this particular story is of interest to me because, as we mentioned many times, the similarities and echoes of that of the COVIDian era, and are we only a matter of days away from hearing our first announcement of this being an epidemic in the United States or in the United Kingdom. And my guess is it will probably be the UK that declares an epidemic before the United States, because of the National Health Service and the fact that it is provided and subsidized by the government. Resources are extremely limited over there. And you know, in this article, in this video, we heard some articles coming out of the United Kingdom where many of those hospitals in some big parts of the country are already overrun and struggling to cope with the amount of patients that are showing up with not only Subclade K, also norovirus, which is another subject that we have covered here at NoOneWatchesArDee. And we have these two viruses that are sort of running simultaneously, almost hand in hand with one another. And we've also had, you know, additional diseases added to the mix in the Candida auroris, and we've also heard that measles has re-emerged. So it's not just influenza, it's not just norovirus, there is a whole cocktail of deadly diseases that are running rampant around the world at the moment. And is it cause for concern? Should we be worried, or should we just think to myself, it's just nothing but hot air, it's fear porn, it's propaganda, there's nothing to worry about? And again, make of it what you will, folks. I'm sort of merely the messenger that is relaying these articles and newsreels that are circulating at the moment regarding Subclade K. And it is concerning to me, at the very, very least, that this does have all the similarities and all the ingredients of the COVIDian narrative, except for the fact that hand sanitizer and vaccines are not really going to protect you from this. Although if you are vaccinated, the articles have repeated multiple times that your symptoms will be less severe. But as it has been a longer than anticipated video this evening, I am not going to continue much longer talking about Subclade K, although we will probably be talking about it again in an update that is soon to appear on this channel, probably next week. But if you are interested, my next installment of unwatchable content is all about the United States government and allegations that they used a sonic weapon against Venezuelan military that caused those military personnel to bleed from the ears and vomit blood. So be sure to stay tuned to this channel for that next installment of unwatchable content. But this installment of unwatchable content has drawn to a conclusion. All that is left for me to say is thank you, each and every one of you who has watched this evening. You can always support me by leaving me a comment in the comment section below and let me and other people know what you thought about this evening's presentation and what you found particularly interested. If you wish to support me further, further and financially, you can also do so at buymeacoffee.com, where I have recently set up a page and have also received some donations from some very kind and generous Noadians, Curious Georgia and Denise Winterbottom, who has actually become a monthly supporter, a shitty supporter of Shit Video Productions. So thank you to you fine viewers who have already made some financial donations to this channel, but nobody is under any obligation to do so. Really and truly, all I do ask for is your viewership and in a lesser extent your attention. And if you do want to sprinkle a little bit of cherries on the top for me, leave me a comment. It does mean an awful lot more to me than a pity like, which people do out of instinct when they join this video. Only like the video if you really like it. There's no need to press the thumbs up. I would much rather you took your time, effort and energy into leaving me a comment rather than a pity like. But that's it, folks. We've said all we need to say, other than until the next installment of Unwatchable Content, make sure to be excellent to each other. May the force be with us all until I see you again. Take care. This is Ardy signing out for now.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes!
Hey, Luke. May the force be with you.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.